What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Monday, and look who's back. It's Eric Brandt, the GOAT, the legendary. You're making your triumphant return. I'm gassing it up because we had a good round of guests, but I mean, Eric is, of course, one of a kind, back from Hawaii. You look like you got blue sky there behind you, even though it's just a backdrop. What's going on, man? How was your vacation? I know we streamed on Saturday for the fantasy football draft, but obviously we were focused on our fantasy teams. But now we're kind of back for real. It's been 18 days since I got to talk Blazers with you, so nothing has really changed. And how was your vacation? How's everything been?
My vacation was pretty awesome, short of the horrific timing of everything going on in my life right now, of like leaving for that long wasn't the greatest. But other than that, and then on the first full day we were there, we had to make a trip to the emergency room.
Really?
I don't know if you want to hear that story now or not, but
well, if you're asking that, then I probably don't. But also, chat probably does.
Okay, I'll just tell it then. So we were, I was there with my family, and I have a 6 and 10-year-old. There were several places. We went to Kauai, and there were several places that had kind of like either a naturally or a man-made rocked-in area. So like it was more like a pond or a lake instead of a beach or whatever. But there was also, around that, there's waves and normal places like beaches and stuff. So we all tried boogie boarding. This is the first full day we were there. And it wasn't the best beach to boogie board on. There was a lot of like logs and stuff. And so my son and I ended up just staying and boogie boarding. He loved it. He was like just a natural at it and just catching every wave and stuff. And my littlest didn't really like it too much, so she went to go play in the little pond area with my wife and oldest. And she came back a couple hours later and wanted to try it again. And she was standing like in an area where it wasn't good to do it right there. And so I'm like telling her she needs to move down to this area where there was no logs. And right as I'm saying that, a wave like hits her from behind and knocks her onto her board, and she just takes off on this wave straight into a log. And I tried to rush to catch her before she hit the log, but I was too far away. And fortunately, she goes headfirst into the log at pretty good speed, and it made like a really loud noise. And my wife was already like, I told her, why did you want to go to Hawaii if you were like this? But she was like scared of like having the kids out in the ocean as it was. And I'm like telling her, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Like everyone comes here to play in the water, So of course, the first day, like something happens. And like, I'll never be able to forget that sound her head made hitting that. It was really bad. Yikes. And immediately just huge knot just bubbles up on her face. And she's crying, and she looked like, I don't know if you've ever seen that, like with a boxer or something, where they get hit and they just get that huge knot on their forehead. Yeah. So, yeah, we ended up, luckily there was a hospital not too far from where we were. So she was totally fine. It looked worse than it was. The doctor examined her, said everything was fine, and that she'd probably look really bad the next day because it was going to travel down to her eye or something, but it just like went down the next day and was fine. But yeah, she was a little traumatized from it. My wife was traumatized from it. And so that was our first day there. But then she didn't really boogie board much the rest of the trip, but she eventually was fine, got back in the water a lot and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so luckily we avoided any serious complications and were able to enjoy the rest of our trip, and she was fine. But yeah, it was pretty scary the first day.
Yeah, that sounds scary. I can only put myself in a father's shoes, but I can only imagine.
Yeah. Like it probably could have done a lot more damage than it did, so we got really lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Good thing you guys are back in one piece. Rest of vacation good though?
Yeah, I was having trouble. Like I was trying to boogie board, but like I weighed too much, so like I kept weighing down the boogie board. I needed like an extra large one or something. But like the last 2 days, I finally went to some places that had some stronger waves and was able to catch a few. So I ended up getting them. But yeah, my son just kept going crazy, like catching every wave, and he was having the time of his life. And
nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, thinking of you boogie boarding is just making me think of the clips of you ever see like goats on boogie boards.
Yeah.
That's just what popped into my head. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and then had a ton of fun. Some of the beaches we just all of a sudden had a bunch of like sea turtles pop up around us and things like that.
Dude,
and,
I love sea turtles.
Yeah, went to some really cool. We basically explored the whole island that we could. Saw a lot of cool sights and a bunch of amazing beaches. And one of my favorite parts was the shave ice there. I don't know, it hit different there. They make it with like ice cream. And you ever have like snow cone type thing?
Yeah, and I know it hits different there.
Yeah, so they have ice cream with like the shaved ice on top, and then they put like a topping on it and stuff. Had like a root beer float, one of those, which was probably the best dessert I've ever had in my life. And yeah, so a lot of fun times with the family and got home safe and all that. So yeah, things are good.
Yeah, glad you got some time off. Meanwhile, I've been sitting here in Vancouver, Washington, doing the same thing as always. No days off.
Well,
no streams off.
I want to thank Crushables, Rip City Retro, 503, and Stephen Bond.
Stephen?
Yeah. I want to thank all of them. I watched all 4 shows. They were all great in their own different way. And I actually was sitting... because it's 3 hours earlier there, so it was still kind of middle of the evening.
Yeah.
But yeah, my daughter and I every night would go and close down the pool because it was open till 10. She always wanted to go down to the pool when we got home. So no matter what time we got home, she was like, "Can we go to the pool for 40 minutes or whatever?" So yeah, a couple of nights I just brought my phone and sat in the hot tub watching the show.
How did you drop it in the pool?
I'd like set it on just like rock thing for a minute, and it like slipped off. And it went right into the yeah, but it was fine. I like an hour later.
Yeah, man, it was just interesting, just having different personalities, because we don't do a ton of guest stuff because everybody hates us. No, I'm just kidding. Just media guys. Me and Steven had that debate though, which was pretty fun, and me and Steven had many debates, but.
I was just sitting in the hot tub raging at everything Steven said.
I bet. Yeah, I was going to say, did you throw your phone into the pool or did you drop it into the pool? But no, it was just interesting. Just 4 completely like unique characters,
right.
503 we've known for the long... I mean, I've known who Crushables is for the past 4 or 5 years. I actually I knew who he was on YouTube before I started Blazers Uprise, so... I guess I'm a Crushables OG compared to him being a Blazers Uprise OG, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool, though. It was cool. Rich obviously is quite a character, and you've been able to make content with him. That was the first time I've actually ever even like talked to him like voice to voice. So I mean that all the cutouts and stuff. I told him to get some of ours off our Discord, get some of the emojis. He's like, I didn't want to do that. I think he should, and. The reason I brought on those 4 guests is let's just say like there's plans in the future to try and expand beyond just me and Eric in terms of content next season, all right? Like one of the things I want to do, chat, I'll give you a little like early teaser as to something that I want to do next season, but I want to do a semi-regular like roundtable type show where we get 4 or 5 people, maybe something like Around the Horn, if you guys have ever watched that show. And I just think it would be hilarious to host something where Steven's on it, I'm on it, Eric's on it, Rich is on it.
Oh, man.
Rich is just there cracking jokes while Eric and Steven try to bite each other's heads off while I sit there and laugh. And maybe you got, I don't know, somebody else, another member of the panel. I think that would be great content, rotate through some guys so it's not like the same show twice in a row. That would be, I feel like that would be really good, fun content that's kind of a little bit more of like the mainstream debate type of stuff, because like me and Eric will never force opinions or fake opinions. Grace says, yeah, and me. Oh my goodness, it sounds like.
Can you imagine him being?
Yeah. Can I use Gray for views? Probably. No, just kidding. Especially next season, because and this is kind of going to be a segue into talking about the Blazers and my thoughts on them at the moment. But like going into next season, it's about trying to create an entertaining product. Like before, we've just focused on like analyzing the game, right? Because we're trying to win. Hopefully we get to the playoffs and we can break down the chess game that is adjustments during a playoff series and this and that. But we're not going to be good next year, Like, if we are, then obviously we could always fall back on, like, we're going to analyze things, and we still will, obviously. It's just a little different when you're, like, trying to win games versus being focused on, like, long-term development, right? So, like, next season, my mindset's kind of been reborn, Eric, where it's like, how can we create a super entertaining product? I already think we do a good job of it, but like, is there ways where we can just do something new that viewers will like? And that's kind of one of the ideas. And like, I will never force an opinion, so I won't go on a show and be like, okay, well today I'm going to decide that actually I side with Joe Cronin and screw Damian Lillard. I'm just going to do that, and me and Eric are going to rage at each other for entertainment. I will never do that. I've never faked an opinion. Like, if you guys have watched me, you guys should know that. But there's people out there that don't have to fake opinions, that have very different opinions that can create that debate-style entertainment. So a little bit more of that next year would be fun. And obviously, like, Steven is the guy because, my goodness, Eric, like, what was your reactions? Or give us your reaction to some of the things that Eric said. Like, what bugged you?
It's just I forgot exactly what it was, but he several times like made up stuff and acted like it was like fact, that's the stuff that I don't like,
He is king of being the devil's advocate. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't know if it's because he's the radio guy, and I know I brought that up with him on his segment or on his stream, but he asked the questions, even if they're silly questions. He'll ask questions to spur conversation. And sometimes those questions are absolutely ridiculous, and I just have to sit there and say, no, what the hell was that question? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there was times where I was like, I wish Eric was here to respond to this.
Yeah. It's like, because Aaron Fentress posted that interview or that press conference right before that show that had it was the press conference when Dame signed his extension, and it was him and Cronin up there. And Dame literally was up there saying, I only signed because I was promised we were going to win. And I asked them, hey, what are we doing here? Are we trying to win or what? And they all said that they were, and we're all on the same page or whatever. And then he's like, well, what if Dame only signed it for the money? Or what if this was his plan all along to ask out? And it's like, dude, if you watch that press conference and you've watched Dame for 11 years, I just don't understand how anyone out there can think that this was his plan a year ago, was to just take the money and then ask out a year later because he knew like this team was not gonna win or something. Like I don't know, it just makes no sense, man.
I'm just asking the questions.
I know. And then you always have to say that, like I like Steven a lot, but like just you can't just say I'm asking the question when it doesn't make any sense,
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a difference between on air and off air. Like off air, I love Steven, great dude, chill guy, like really like the guy. On air, I still like him on air. It's just a little different when you're debating something, right? Like, and that's the thing a lot of sports fans struggle with, is separating the debate aspect about sports from just the personal aspect. Like I'll have a problem if somebody says, you're an effing idiot over a sports opinion, right? Because that's making it personal. But you can sit here and debate sports, and it can even, like, sound heated, but as long as it doesn't cross the line where, like, I'm attacking you, you're attacking me, like, if it's something where we're just going after each other's opinions and our opinions differ, then that's good sports debate. And there's a separation between that and, like, taking it personally and making it personal. The problem is a lot of people will make it personal and then try and act like, oh, well, you just don't like a difference of opinion. That's why you banned me from the Blazers Uprise chat, when it's really never, ever the case. Like,
well, like you and I debating Brandon Miller versus Amen Thompson, right? Like, it's not like I was like, I hate this person for liking Amen, you know, like, because I like Amen too, but like, it's like, yeah, we're just talking ball. It's not like we're picking different sides to hate each other or something, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing with Steven. And the way, like, he goes about things reminded me of something. I don't know if I said this on stream, but I read stuff on the internet, and there is a couple of websites or forums, you might say, that seem to lean towards Joe Cronin's side of things. They're against Dame. And
well, he also said that his whole audience because he's on a local radio show, all thinks like him, you know? He said that on your show.
I feel like the younger crowd sides more with Dame compared to the older crowd. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm kind of stuck in the...
Yeah, like not
the middle of that, but yeah.
There's outliers, of course. You know, there's definitely outliers, but it just seems like there is a little bit of a correlation there. But I was reading one of those sites that this site might be the most against Dame. It's not Reddit. Okay, it's not Reddit. It might be the most against Dame as I've seen any website, and there was somebody who's like criticizing Dame on that website, and he's like, man, Dame just really turned into a diva almost overnight out of nowhere. And it's like, you're so close to figuring it out, but you're still so far away. So that quote kind of sums up a lot of the disagreement that I have with people, is like, yeah, why did Dame, in your eyes, turn into a diva overnight? Like, surely it couldn't have just been because he's like, you know what? He just woke up one morning like, you know what? I'm gonna be a diva. I'm just gonna completely throw everything out the window that I've preached for 11 years, right? And I'm just gonna decide to be a diva.
I wanted to be in Portland my whole career, and then I was just like, no, I only want to play in Miami now for the rest of my career.
Like, especially people like Dame don't change overnight. You know, so if you're saying, man, he really, really changed overnight, well, you gotta start thinking about, like, okay, what specific reasons might I not see as to why he changed overnight? And that's, like, my whole thing. It's obvious. Even if you don't agree with Eric's intel, our thoughts on the matter, I feel like it's pretty clear that there is some stuff that went on behind the scenes that we don't know. So... That's the thing for me, is like, nobody changes overnight. I don't understand how everything that we see from that's been reported publicly, I don't understand why people think that's the complete picture. Like, everything that Woj says, Chris Haynes says, etc., that's the total picture. Because I just think it's very clear that there is something that went wrong within the trust between these two parties that isn't fully explained by what has been made public.
Yeah, and the thing that gets me is we have, as you talked about on the last show with Rich, we have Cronin on record lying straight to our face like multiple times, and we want to believe that he's the one that didn't break the trust, but Dame did. Like,
yeah. Well, you know what the argument is. You know what the argument is
GM speak.
Well, no. I've read this from multiple people, man. We're diving back into it. Let's go. Yeah. I read this from just multiple people have said this. I don't think that Cronin lied. I just think that he overpromised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and along those lines too, this it turns into this argument every time, and I'm getting more and more frustrated. I think this is one of the things I was frustrated with Steven too. Mm-hmm. It's this idea that there wasn't a good trade out there for the third pick. And if it was just that, fine. But every one of their moves since acquiring Jeremy Grant over, that's what now, 14 months ago, has been against trying to win. And when they made the trades at the trade deadline, they did not say, we are setting us up for the best possible rebuild or the best possible thing. It was every time they made a bad trade or a trade for a young player, an expiring contract, or second round picks, it was always, this is setting us up for the next time, right? It was always, okay, the trade, like last year, we draft Sharp. It was like, we are setting ourselves up with as many assets as possible to make a trade at the trade deadline. And then he can't get a trade done at the trade deadline. And they're like, well, we acquired these assets. We got an extra first round pick now. We got these 5 seconds. We are going to have all these trade currency, all this trade currency to make our big move now this summer. And then that doesn't happen. And then everyone's like, well, there were no trades out there. But it's like, it's not because there were no trades out there. It's because every chance he's had, every conversation he's had with Damian Lillard, and Dame even said this goes back well before he was even the GM. He was talking to him. He was go in his office and talk to him prior to him being the GM while Olshey was still here. And they felt like they were always on the same page. And so that's why he was fine with Cronin taking that position when it happened, because he felt like they were on the same page. And so to go back now and say, well, I made this trade of Josh Hart because we got a first round pick that we're going to use as a trade asset. And then fast forward a few months later, and you didn't even try to trade it. You even admitted, as long as Chris Murray was on the board, you didn't even take a single phone call for that pick because you were not going to entertain trades for it. And so if that's the case, how can you say that it's just about the third pick? It's not. It's like that. I feel like they didn't even try to fulfill any of those promises. And you can believe that or not, but all the evidence is proven by their actions, and they all back up that fact. And yet people want to believe some mythical thing that they tried everything they could to please Dame and everything they could to make a trade. But yeah, it didn't happen, and it's fine. You can think this isn't the same argument. You can think that doing this was the right decision, that Cronin made the right decision, that he is a smart GM, and it was the best move for this franchise to move on. Now, we can agree or disagree about that, but you can make that case. But you cannot, in my opinion, make the case that he was upfront and actually tried everything he could to make the other way work before switching to this case. I believe he, this whole time, was focused on this rebuild and never had any true intentions of fulfilling that. And that will always bother me about this front office. And once again, you can choose to believe that or not, but every bit of evidence supports that theory. And if you want to believe some mythical or theoretical, hypothetical, like conversations or something that happened where he tried his best, but there just wasn't anything available for the third pick, like, that's fine. But like, what about all the other moves? Why didn't he sign any vets in free agency? Why didn't he sign like a Jay Crowder or what? He didn't get anyone to help Dame. Like, he didn't do any of the things he said. Like, get size. Like, where were the backup centers and the size and length on defense? And what's with wanting a Josh Hart at every position, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, Josh Hart can't be a part of this future or whatever? Like, None of it makes any sense. And to Dame, he was telling these things to Dame this whole freaking time, and now it's just like we're supposed to believe that he tried everything he could to fulfill those promises, when more likely than not, the correct outcome is going to be that he never intended or wasn't really serious about doing any of the fulfilling any of those promises.
Yeah, so my whole problem is his entire tenure, it's been he's setting himself up to make win now moves around Dame. All the way up until this summer, even tanking was setting himself up to make win now moves around Dame. Okay, last year's trade deadline. Well, we weren't going to be able to sign Josh Hart, so we got a first round pick that is an asset that we can use in a trade to maybe get Chicago first round picks back, or, we can just send the pick out maybe just straight up in a trade, right? Like, I understand that, Josh Hart had free agency coming up, that there might not have been a chance to bring him back. Like, I think we could have brought him back, but, it's iffy on whether he would have returned or not. Regardless of if he would have returned or not, because that's just a hypothetical that we can discuss, in circles. The fact is they got something back for him that they didn't then pivot into something to help them win now or set up any win now moves. The problem I have is that we're setting up win now moves around Dame. That's why we had to trade Norm and get out from underneath his contract, right? That's why we traded Rocco. That's why we traded CJ. We got back a pick for CJ. The second round picks even. Right? Our currency that we got back from GP2. Like, his entire tenure here has been, we're setting things up to make a win now move around Dame. And then, once this offseason comes, all of a sudden it's, well, we shouldn't be setting up a win now moves around Dame.
It's
so
impossible to win with him anyway.
I just have a problem with, like, everything he did up until this point was, like, for one specific thing, and then, oh, wait, no, we should go a completely other direction. Because why weren't you saying that 2 years ago if that's how you feel now? Because Cronin even said it himself that it was going to be a multi-year process. So if you weren't willing to see it out multiple years to try and win with Dame, why weren't you screaming, let's trade him 2 months ago or 2 years ago? Yeah. Because a lot of the people that wanted to go young this offseason didn't want to trade Dame a year or two ago. Now I understand it's a little bit easier because you got the third pick and you get Scoot, but weren't we supposed to tank to win now around Dame? Wasn't that kind of the message going into the offseason? Like, the messaging has just been specifically to build around Dame, and then it becomes a situation where, despite 2 years of setting things up to win around Dame, all of a sudden we're not set up to make a win now move. After 2 years of trying to set ourselves up to make a win now move around Dame, all of a sudden, when we have the third freaking pick, we're not set up to make a win now move around Dame? How is it going to be any better of a setup to make a win now move around Dame than having the third pick when Scoot Henderson was going to fall to you? That's my problem. I think a lot of people have pivoted away from the singular excuse that I think Cronin was given the past 2 years, which is he's setting things up for a future around Dame.
Mm-hmm. Well, Taylor Packer asked, for a while you wanted to build through the draft and hope that Dame could win in his twilight years when guys develop. Do you think it's possible Cronin wanted to do that at first? Okay, this goes back to, once again, the words not matching the actions. Because after this season, this was back in April of this year, Cronin got on the mic and specifically said his biggest mistake so far was believing in that route and that thinking that the young guys or projects could develop fast enough to help him, and that he literally said the exact words out of his mouth are, we need to get veterans on this roster. I need to get veterans to help Dame win. I need to get guys who know their roles and who we can count on instead of guys we're hoping develop into that role. And that's been my biggest mistake. That is what he said. So if that was his thinking all along, was to do that route, where, because I still think it could work. The problem is it can't work with Scoot. And Scoot makes it different, right? Because you can't have your two best players be point guards. If there are any other position like small forward, like you can like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, right? They can just play it. They can both play wing. It doesn't really matter, right? But if you have your two best players at the same position, like just assuming that Scoot becomes our second best player, it's just like we need things that Scoot doesn't provide. We need front court help and we need defensive help. And as of right now, we don't have either of those. So the problem is, yes, the young route could have possibly worked. Like you got Sharp last year. We trade Anthony and the third pick or whatever and get a veteran, but we still have a young player like Sharp who is ready to step into the shooting guard role. So like it could still work in my opinion doing both timelines. The problem is, it's just, like who knows what would have happened if Scoot goes too, I guess. And you're talking about like Brandon Miller or maybe even Amen filling like a small forward role instead of a point guard role. Like maybe you can convince Dame to stay, but man, when you purposely don't take phone calls or hang up the phone on people, and you know there's teams willing to give up a ton of assets for a Scoot Henderson when he's on the board at 3, and you're not even willing to take phone calls at that point. And I mean, from what I know, they weren't willing to take phone calls as of Tuesday of that week. So a full 2 days before the draft when they told Dame it was likely they were keeping the pick. They didn't take a single serious phone call about the third pick. And this goes back to also the trade deadline, his first trade deadline, where he made trades several days before the trade deadline and then say, well, they didn't have any value. Well, you never know how much value someone has until you're up against that deadline and you see what people are willing to give up. Yeah. So problem.
The talk leading up to it was the Blazers are going to get their best offers when they're on the clock. Once Charlotte takes Brandon Miller and teams know that Scoot's there at 3.
Yeah, and everyone said that. Hyken, Meringue, like any Blazer reporter.
Reddit.
Yeah.
Reddit was yelling at us about how we didn't know that, apparently.
Every single Blazer fan knew if the Charlotte Hornets took Brandon Miller, like the rumor was, that was going to create this big trade possibility, or like you'd have all these teams calling, right? And this brings me to my other misconception. And people keep saying, well, there were no good offers for number 3. Well, if the Pelicans apparently were calling nonstop for days, and also while we were on the clock, like they were super desperate, they wanted Scoot really bad. If you would have, they have, I just saw a thing like ranking the best draft pick capital for all teams. We were like 15th, by the way, like right in the middle.
Yeah.
But the Pelicans, I forgot if they were 2 or 3, but they were up near the top. They have a huge cachet of picks. So you could possibly get, 4 or 5 firsts or something, like even if it's not. And this goes back to my whole Trey Murphy and Herb Jones thing.
And multiple firsts, yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I know Trey Murphy isn't better than Scoot Henderson. That's not what I'm saying. But if you could add a Trey Murphy who's like a lights out shooter, above average defender, and get like 4 firsts, and you could then use those 4 firsts along with the 23rd pick to open up your future picks. And then all of a sudden you have, besides Oklahoma City and maybe 1 or 2 other teams, the best stockpile of first-round picks in the entire NBA on top of Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe or whatever. There's no player you can't get at that point unless you're a terrible GM. So my whole thing is, it's not just about like, oh, well, the 3rd pick wasn't worth anyone, because we potentially could have gotten a superstar player and Trey Murphy and probably still had some picks left over. And like, so it doesn't make sense to me how people are just saying oh, well, Dame's just mad they didn't trade the third pick. It's a multitude of them not taking advantage of any of their assets and then pushing it off saying, oh, I promise you next time. And that's why I 100% believe Dame was promised when he sat out that they would trade the pick, because they have been promising him they would do it, and then they didn't. And then they had to tell him, oh, I'm sorry, we'll do it next time, just like he had to tell all of us, right? And that kept happening. And it got to the point where Dame was finally like, enough. Either you do what you're saying or I'm not going to trust you anymore. And that's what, when you talk about that person being so close to understanding, like Dame changing overnight, that's what happened. Dame realized that Joe Cronin is full of absolute crap. He is a liar, and he had been lying to Dame this whole time, and that's what changed. Dame is a very loyal and trustworthy person, and he was pissed when he realized that Joe Cronin's been BSing him this whole time. And
well, he had a quote too. He had a quote recently on a podcast he did. He said, I think for all of us, we have things we know we want to accomplish for ourselves. A lot of times when it gets hard and when it seems like it's getting further away and you're not getting to where you want to go, some people just fold. They just give up. That's about as much of a quote as we've had from Dame that we can read into since this entire saga started. I think that's hinting at how he feels Joe Cronin went about this offseason. He folded in terms of trying to build a win around Dame because it seemed like it was getting further and further away. So regardless of whether or not you think the direction is the right move, I think it's pretty clear how Dame feels.
Alex's final score: Tori's power strip 13, Blazers Uprise 0.
It's not even plugged into the power strip anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
Very
it was fine
choppy.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of it is the rain. I don't know. Who knows? I hear violent typing and scrolling, says Tyler James. I don't know if we can be heard or not, but good connection, YouTube says. And now it's buffering. Are we here? Are we back?
The video's really choppy. I don't know if the audio is or not.
I think it's just warming back up, you know? I did everything I can to fix the internet, so... It's only, twice in the last month? How long ago was that I fixed it? Like a month ago? So, yeah, we're chilling. Okay, so there was a comment that I wanted to respond to for a while. And right when I started responding to it, we lagged. So, just putting it off even more. But there's a comment that just confuses me. Jimmy in chat, he disagrees with us, it's fine. Says, so Eric, you expect Cronin to walk to the podium and say, I want to trade Dame. So then he just lowered his trade value. LOL. Yeah, real smart. Jimmy, what is the difference between saying you want to trade Dame and being forced to trade Dame? How is being forced to trade Dame mean that Dame has more trade value than going to the podium and saying you want to? Because isn't the whole conversation right now that Dame doesn't have much trade value because he's trying to force his way to Miami? So pushing him to that point, how is that good for his trade value?
Also, the way he set it up was basically he'd have to trade the number 3 pick to please Dame, right? And that's... So I don't understand why he would volunteer that he's going to be super duper win now mode and uber aggressive and he's going to push all his chips in. Like, because then now people are saying they got leveraged in that situation, right? He's always leveraged. It's so dumb. It's based off his own words. So
I have a problem with a guy who's always out leveraged, no matter if he has the asset or doesn't. Right? It's like, we can't acquire anyone good for the third pick, anyone meaningful for the third pick. But when we were trading guys at his first trade deadline, it was, we can't expect anything good back for CJ McCollum or Norman Powell. So that's the thing. And now it's, nobody wants Dame. Well, the landscape going into this whole saga was that there wasn't going to be many teams that would give up a bunch for Dame simply because they didn't need a point guard, weren't trying to win, or just didn't have enough. Miami kind of falls under that third tier. But I just, it gets to the point where it's like, I am tired of the excuses being he's setting something up, and then once he actually has the assets to do something, it's he can't do anything with them. And I'm tired of somebody in every single situation he's ever had as a GM in 2 years, he has no leverage.
You know what's worse than that? It's almost all of those same people are the same people who hate Nurkic, right, and wanted him traded for years, and who promised us for months last year that Anthony Simons would be traded on January 15th or whenever he was eligible to be traded by the deadline. And then what's funny is Joe Cronin, this masterful GM that everyone loves, this guy preached that trading those guys for nothing and getting that flexibility would lead to us being able to build our roster differently, right? We'd be able to finally put those pieces around Dame because we have flexibility, salary cap flexibility, and all this stuff. And what does he do that summer? He re-signs those two guys, right? That's all. That's like what he uses those cap space. And I mean, if you watch the show, you knew that was what was going to happen anyway. We weren't going to get Ben Simmons like another show like ours promised their audience that Cronin was setting up to get Ben Simmons that summer or whatever. But like we told you guys, he wasn't going to do crap with that. And then what did we hear? Oh, Nurk hasn't signed yet on the first day of free agency. Cronin's going to get Ayton and shut you guys up, right? That's like, we heard all kinds of stupid crap like that. Cronin was never close to getting anything good on this team for Nurkic or whatever. Like, he just re-signed him and called it a day, and it's exactly what he did this offseason too. He re-signs Jeremy Grant and Matisse Thybulle, he matches and calls it a day. He hasn't done a single thing in free agency. He still hasn't.
Just wait till next. Just wait till next time. Next time comes. Oh, it's gonna happen. Watch, it's gonna happen. Oh, nothing happens. Oh, wait, but no, he didn't. He just couldn't do anything. Wait till the next time now. Okay, next time comes. Oh, well, he just couldn't do anything. It's just a repeating cycle. And then it finally came to a head this offseason with, well, he couldn't do anything, so he should never do anything. Goodbye, Dame.
We're 2 months into free agency, and he signed Moses Brown to a partially guaranteed contract. That's like his only
guaranteed money he's given to somebody that wasn't a re-signing.
Yeah.
He hasn't made a single trade. His biggest free agency signing is Moses Brown. I mean, it just guys, like, this is why it's so frustrating for us, because it's just like the pattern seems so clear to us, and we were the pessimistic guys going into this offseason. Now we had some hope that like Jaylen Brown could happen, like Cronin was actually going to want to win, Cronin's intentions were in the right place, but beyond that, we were pretty pessimistic. We didn't want to get you guys down because we, truly didn't know exactly what was going to happen after the draft. But we had Eric, you basically said, well, Dame's gone. I was still holding out some hope. Like, it was just a very confusing whole, 9 days between the draft and when free agency started. But in the end, it's what I always go back to, right? Like, we can get our hopes up and we can be optimistic. Nothing wrong with that, but in the end, you just have to look at the pattern and the precedent that's been set from a front office, right? And that goes for all sports. Like, my Seattle Mariners, I have optimism that maybe we can sign Shohei Ohtani this offseason, but the precedent says that our ownership will be extremely cheap and will not give the money out for him, and we'll just sign a couple of like mediocre bats and then probably cut both of them by midseason. Like, that is the precedent the Mariners have set. Okay, like the precedent that the Blazers have set is Jody won't go into the tax. Jody doesn't want to pay money. Jody might care about pinching pennies in terms of just minimum contracts, even if she's not in the tax. And then Joe Cronin isn't going to make a win now type of move. He hasn't done so outside of Jeremy Grant, and Jeremy Grant was basically served on a silver platter by Damian Lillard to him. Okay? That's the only player he's gotten that has somewhat impacted winning. Like, just Josh Hart's a good player, but he traded, in my opinion, the better player in CJ McCollum for him. Like, everything has been a downgrade in a downhill slope outside of the Jeremy Grant trade. Everything that Cronin has produced himself has been a downward slope to this point. And there was no reason to expect that, oh, this time will be different. But now it becomes a situation where, like, oh, yeah, they should just keep going down despite the narrative that he was just setting himself up for something. So that's really where we're at now. That's really where we're at. Anyway, go on.
Let's not forget that as part of that trade, he tried to offer Josh Hart and the first round pick, potential lottery pick, to Detroit for Jeremy Grant at that trade deadline. So we wouldn't have even had Josh Hart as part of that trade, and we wouldn't have had the possibility of having a lottery pick, and which he failed to backup protections on and all that stuff. But yeah, that's another point. But
shout out to Jack M. Let me thank this before I forget. $2 dono from Jack M. Thank you, Jack. Says, would Murphy/Herb have been on the table? If they really wanted Scoot Henderson, then I assume both those guys plus more would have been on the table.
Yeah, Herb might not have been because they probably already discussed getting out of his contract or whatever, or opting out of his contract to sign a real longer deal. So maybe not Herb, but yeah. I mean, but that's what you do. You say, don't call back. Like, this is exactly what Toronto's done to us the last 2 years. Don't call back unless Trey Murphy and 4 firsts are on the table. If you want Scoot that badly, you'll put it all on the table. If not, like, sorry, just stop calling me and see what happens. If they call then when you're on the clock with the third pick and you answer, that has to mean they're willing to do it, right? So like, why? It's the same thing with what's happening now with the Dame trade. It's like Miami can't seem to even get them to tell them what it would take for them to accept an offer. So how can they figure out what they should be looking for with a third team and all this stuff? It's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. Jimmy has another statement. What's a question? He says, question for you then. What if he didn't make the all-in move the last 2 years because he didn't believe Dame is the one to build on? Okay, if that's the case, then he should have traded Dame much sooner than now, when he could have gotten back more on the trade market. I mean, well, he had his core injury. Like, who knows the timing? But
right.
B, if that's how he felt, then why did he tell us the exact opposite multiple times in a row? Why did he sit here and say, we're super obligated to build a winner around Dame. We want to build a winner around Dame. We want to be super duper aggressive. We owe it to him. Like, all his statements are literally as far away from that as possible. So he didn't have to say all that. He could sit here and just be he gets the excuse of like, oh, well, that's just GM speak. Well, GM speak is also just sitting here saying, we'll explore all options. We're committed to Dame.
Yeah, he didn't have to volunteer any of that info.
Like, yeah, but no, he made it a point, like a legitimate point about how aggressive they were going to be building around Dame and how obligated they were. He did not have to stress that point as much as he did. Okay, he could have sat there and been wishy-washy, just like a bunch of GMs, but he wasn't. He made it a point. So if he felt like Dame wasn't the one to build around for the past 2 years, he probably should have traded him when he stepped in. Or he should have, not made it such a point that he was going to build around him.
What's funny is, looking back on it now, it almost seems like when someone's compensating for something, you know? Like it's just over the top, super aggressive. We're gonna do everything it takes just to make sure people know that, you know, like you're trying to convince everyone that's of something that's not true, and that absolutely is the case. But okay, this is the perfect question, Jimmy. I'll read it once again. What if he didn't make the all-in move the last 2 years because Cronin didn't believe Dame is the one to build on? Okay. I'm going to assume that's true, right? Let's just assume it's true. Jimmy, you're 100% true that that's what Cronin thinks. That is exactly why Tori and I now feel the way we do, because he told Dame the exact opposite for these last 2 years. And that is the problem. It's not that what he said in the press conferences, it's that Damian Lillard has said multiple times behind the scenes that Joe Cronin told him that they were aligned, was completely transparent with him. And how many times did we hear that word transparency? That he told Dame he wanted to win and was aligned with that. And that's what Dame believed. And that is why Dame got pissed this summer when he found out that that wasn't the case. So if that is the case, that is exactly why I hate and cannot stand and will never, ever give Joe Cronin props for doing anything, because that man sat there in the front office and lied to Damian Lillard for his entire tenure here. For what? You're trying to keep him here happy as long as possible? Or, most likely scenario, they wanted Dame gone this whole time. That's what I've been saying. They wanted Dame gone, and they didn't want to have the pressure of having to win with him. It got annoying to them, according to someone I spoke with. And they wanted him to be the bad guy. And this has all been setting him up to be the bad guy instead of them trading the franchise player, which they could have just done, like you said, Tori. They could have done that, but what would have happened if they did that? You would have had an outcry of people who support Dame saying, he wants to be here. Why would you just decide not to keep him here? Why would you decide to trade him? And then everyone would take his side, even though, or they would feel bad for Dame, because Dame would be sitting there saying, I didn't want this, right? Like, I didn't want to leave Portland, but they want me to be gone, so I guess I have to be traded. So that's the problem, is this whole thing has been setting Dame up to be the fall guy so Cronin and Jody can like escape some sort of fan outlash about it. And quite frankly, they've done a masterful job. It's working. Like a good portion of the fan base is still supportive of them despite everything we've talked about. But yeah, that's exactly why, if Cronin has thought that, and I've told you guys this many times on this show, that I was hearing early last season that Cronin was intrigued by Anthony and Sharp and going young and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. If that's how he felt,
and we didn't believe it,
he did not ever tell that to Damian Lillard, and that's, to me, that's inexcusable. Like there's just no coming back from that. And yeah, he also asked me earlier, what are you going to do when Cronin starts making good moves and we're good again and he's a good GM and all that stuff? Okay, that's fine. It still doesn't mean, like, because he's going to say you're going to wish you didn't bash him or whatever. But everything I'm saying has nothing to do with his moves, like, in the future. Like, he could still make good moves. He could still be a good GM and stuff like that without the burden of Damian Lillard if he ever trades him. Who knows if he'll ever even trade him at this point. He can't even trade Damian Lillard. Like, he can't even do that, right?
Yeah.
I don't, like, how are we supposed to believe that all of a sudden with, like, even when they trade Dame, they have all these guards still. He's going to somehow magically learn how to make trades better and negotiate trades and not have leverage against every single thing he does. Like, that's just going to magically change once Dame's gone. And if it does, why wouldn't we just accept the Miami package and move on so we can get to that point? I'd love to be at that point right now, right? Where we could stop having these leverage excuses and all this crap. Like that's what I want to get to. I want to be there with that. Yeah. So like I don't get how I'm supposed to like regret what I'm saying right now, because the way he treated Dame, he's not a good person. And I just, to me, I don't respect people like that. So I'm not going to respect him. And he can make the best moves. We could eventually win a championship. I'll give him his props. And I know you guys don't believe me, but I've said all along, as long as he gets like 4 firsts and Jovic or Hawkins or one of the two, I mean, hopefully it's both of them, but like at least a couple of you guys and 4 firsts, I'm fine with the Miami package. I will not give Joe crap about that. I'll give him crap about everything leading up to Dame requesting out. But I think that's about as good as he could do under the circumstances right now. So I will be fine with that. I will not bash him for getting that package back.
I mean, leading up to the situation, we were the people trying to warn everyone that if it comes down to a Damian Lillard trade, it's not going to be as much as people expect out of it. Because a lot of people wanted to go that route, and it was pitched as you draft Scoot and then you trade Dame for a haul, right? And you're sitting pretty. Stephen Vaughn was guilty of writing something like that on whatever website he writes for, 750 The Game, their website. Like Stephen had an article where he said to trade Dame for a haul. And it was frustrating for me reading that article because on a previous podcast with Stephen, I had went through multiple scenarios like this team doesn't have enough assets to trade for him. This team doesn't have a point guard. This team's in rebuild mode. And almost every single team was one of those 3 things. Like in order to get a haul for Dame, you need a team that had assets, that was in win now mode, and needed a point guard, didn't have an entrenched point guard. There just wasn't many teams that lined up for that, right? There's a couple, but in order to have a true bidding war, that's what you're going to need. So when Cronin ultimately doesn't get a haul for Dame, I'm not going to criticize him. It's basically everything that put himself in this position is what I'm criticizing him for, and the way he's handled everything. Mm-hmm. At that point, that's just the culmination of all that, That's the inevitable culmination of all of that. That's why I didn't think it was as simple as like, oh, well, you don't overpay with the 3rd pick, because I thought it was either going to be you pull off something with the 3rd pick or you get underpaid for Dame. Yeah. Either way, in terms of asset value, like it might not be pretty in the end. You might have to give up a little bit more in a trade to get a Mikal Bridges or whoever, right, in order to move the 3rd pick, and you might lose out on Scoot. But in the end, it's like you're going to lose out on Dame and not get much back from either. So it wasn't necessarily like a clear cut and dry, like, oh, we'll just make the move that gives you fair value, because it might have been a situation where it wasn't fair value. But this goes back to what Eric has said in terms of how he's handled this, like shelving all serious talks regarding the 3rd pick 2 days before the draft it shows that they weren't serious about trading the pick. Because if they were serious about trading the pick, why wouldn't you at least just like have discussions around it to truly see what's out there leading up till the time that they're on the clock, when everybody was saying that's when they'll get their best offers? Like shelving it 2 days beforehand says to me, okay, well, they weren't interested in the best offers for the 3rd pick. Mm-hmm. Because that was the narrative. And it's just, I think we're at the point where like people forget what some of the context was surrounding this offseason in real time leading up to the draft. Because that's exactly what everybody agreed upon, was that it was going to be when they're on the clock. And now it's, but somehow it's meaningless now that they shelved talks 2 days before. I want to segue this into, unless you're done.
I also want to say,
unless you want to keep going.
So a lot of people's argument are they told Dame it was unlikely they were trading the pick, not that they weren't trading it for sure. Why would they tell Dame that 2 days before the draft if they weren't like 100% not trading it, right? They don't tell Dame that before it happens if they're not 100% sure. And then the only conversation Joe's had with Dame since that day is the meeting on June 26th, in which Dame from what I heard, requested a trade, and Joe tried to talk him out of it, and then agreed to not say anything more about trying to win with him and stuff, and then immediately ran to the press and said he was trying to win, and then they did some research and found out that Joe was lying to him about some of the other stuff, and that's when they knew for 100% sure that Joe was a liar. But yeah, it's just like people just want to believe like every little thing he says there is 100% true, but then everything else is just GM speak, right? Like you can't have it both ways. You can't say that like like when he says he wants to do everything to build around Dame, it's just GM speak. But then when he couldn't find any offers for the third pick, that's 100% true, right? that's him being honest, and like either he's honest about everything or he's not. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Once again, we're not going to speculate on personal stuff, and also I don't think personal stuff is why he requested out. I think maybe it made it a little, depending on whatever it was, because he's said that he's going through stuff, like, it might have made it a little bit easier. I don't know. It's personal stuff. I'm not going to speculate upon that. It's not really my place to speculate on personal stuff like that. So, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, like, in the end, this situation is just, it kind of has shaken me to the core as a Blazer fan. Mm-hmm. In a way. And like it's not a situation where I'm like questioning my fandom of the brand, the Portland Trail Blazers, but that really is where my fandom is. Then again, that's where everybody's fandom is. Like owners change, GMs change, players change. Like what is our fandom? Our fandom is towards the Portland Trail Blazers brand, like the basketball team that plays in Portland, the NBA team, right? So, I'm at the point where, like, literally everything has just been so shaken up to the core that, like, this next season is just going to be, like, the rebirth of my fandom, and I have no idea what that looks like. It's just like, well, this is going to be completely new. Who knows what chaos happens? We're probably going to lose the most games in, over a decade, maybe? We're in rebuild mode. Like, this is really where it's just like, okay, well, I mean, I'm going into next year. It's kind of a clean slate other than the people that are still, running the ship. So, I don't know. It's like a refresh, but the only thing that hasn't been refreshed is, like, I'm still going to be completely fed up with this front office, and I still want a new ownership group and a new GM. That's what I really, really want. At that point, then it will be a completely clean slate, and then I can fully move on. But I was just kind of thinking about this the past couple of days because, football season's starting soon. I'm a Niners fan, right? Like, I'm kind of fed up with the whole Trey Lance thing and Nick Bosa thing, but they're a good team, at least. The Mariners are in a race for their first division since 2001. Like, the Blazers are just a mess right now, man. Regardless of how you feel about the situation, it's just super messy. This organization is staring a long process in the face of trying to rebuild. So that's really where we're at right now. And I don't know. It's just, do you feel the same way? Like, I'm trying to put it into words how I feel as a fan, and it's tough.
Your fandom is experiencing a Rip City remix.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's a playoff our G League team.
I know. Oh, I get the pun. Okay, I was like, so now I'm a G League fan instead? Might as well be.
No, I just think it's funny because that's been one of the biggest like criticisms of us for the past couple months is you guys are more Dame fans than Blazer fans or whatever. It's like, dude, I've been through the Jailblazers era. I've been through them being the worst team in the league. I've been through them being the best team in the league. I've been through it all, from the highs and the lows. And I was born 2 years after the championship, so I didn't get to witness that. But like everything since then, like I've seen it all: bad GMs, good GMs, all that kind of stuff. And like I'm not like changing my fandom or anything, but yeah, it is a weird feeling. But that's one of the reasons why right after the draft I was very clear in saying just rip off the Band-Aid and trade Dame as soon as you can to just like so we can all move on as fans. And it sucks that it's now, 2.5 months later and we're still talking about like all this stuff, and it's still a thing. We haven't been able to move on and just talk about the players we got back in the Dame trade, or what we could possibly do with 4 first-round picks and swaps and stuff in the future, and how Scoot's going to develop with Sharp and all that kind of stuff. Like, I just want to get to that point. I'm sick of it. And yeah, so at this point, I want it to be over, and I've been wanting it to be over now since the draft. And they chose their route, like just freaking. It's all I've been saying is just own up to it.
Yeah, the Blazers are a mess. Question in chat. Well, I did a poll. Okay, I'm surprised that it's only 2/3 of the people that said yes. I mean, I don't know how they're not a mess when you have this whole saga with, in my opinion, their best player in franchise history. The ownership situation is an absolute mess in terms of the trust. And does Jody actually have to sell? And like, how much is she willing to pay? And blah, blah, blah. Chauncey Billups has kind of been a complete mess as the coach. Like, the roster has no front court depth and has 3 guards as their core without their best player. They still have, their core is still 2 guard heavy.
We still have to figure that out, yeah.
We don't have any of our future firsts even right now, and who knows when we'll get control of those.
We have 2030.
Yeah, or we have 2030. Yeah, we'll finally have a future first-round pick. It's in 2030. I might be married by then. Like, season ticket holders are trying to cancel, and ticket representatives have told them, like, their GM is going to make them forget the best player in franchise history ever existed and stuff. Like, how in the world is this organization just not a mess right now? Like, every aspect to me is a mess right now. And that doesn't mean that it can't get better. Like, it has to get better if you're at the bottom, right? And this might be the bottom. But it's just, I don't understand how you can say it's not a mess right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just people that believe what Cronin and Jody have to have happen for them to get out of this mess. And that Scoot's a superstar. So if you believe Scoot's a superstar, I think you think that it's hard to get off the rails if you have a 19-year-old superstar on your roster for decades of this. And so, yeah, I think that's what it is. They think Dame's a superstar.
Yeah. So going back to like kind of what I said earlier in the stream, going into next year, expecting the Blazers to struggle, and kind of taking a step back and like focusing on just like how can we provide a little bit more entertainment during a season that might be a tanking season, that we expect to maybe be a tanking season as we head into it, right? Like, it's kind of a little bit of a refresh. Is like, I'm approaching the channel in a new way, and then I'm approaching my fandom in the new way. Like, I have a different mindset as a fan going into next year than I've had the past decade. Like, it's just everything has kind of gotten shaken up. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch, right? We had a long tenure with Damian Lillard as a Blazer, and it's like that entire tenure's on an Etch-a-Sketch, and Joe Cronin, Jody Allen, Burt Cold just took that thing and shook it up, and now it's blank. The problem is we can't get the Etch-a-Sketch back from Joe Cronin and Jody Allen and Burt Cold. That's the problem. So, anyway.
Well, Mary, a.k.a. Kyle's like 800th burner, asked, can someone explain how the Blazers have been a good team last year according to the hosts, but now have zero hope? Doomsday has arrived. That's such a misinterpretation of what we're saying. One is we made a bunch of moves at the deadline. We got rid of Josh Hart. But what weaknesses did we have last year? Shooting and defense, right? We're probably like shooting off the bench and defense.
Yeah, shot creation off the bench too was a thing.
I mean, we got if Scoot's coming off the bench, if we keep Dame or whatever, I guess you have that shot creator. But if we trade Dame, I still think that's a problem because we're going to have the same issues with Ant.
Yeah. Well, I would say the three biggest issues, and I mean, two of these go together, but defense, rebounding, and lack of size.
Yeah. I mean, those pretty much all go together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had all these weaknesses with last year's team, and like I said earlier in the show, Cronin admitted what some of those weaknesses were, yet didn't address any of them. So it's not that I have zero hope in this team eventually. Scoop being a star and this rebuild maybe working out. It's just a different mindset. It's like, how do you expect a younger player who's not going to be as good as Dame right away to be just as good as Dame, and then you don't have Hart either. I just don't understand how they could be as good as last year.
December 15th, 2022. Please watch that Blazers Uprise episode. Compare the different side of the same people.
Okay.
Because they keep bringing up December 15th, 2022. Yeah. Here's the thing. They overachieved to start the season. Guess what? I was still positive on December 15th. Yes, that positivity was misplaced. They overachieved to start the season defensively. Well, they did not have the front court depth to withstand any injuries. So then when they started getting injured, which is bound to happen to a front court, they weren't built for a full season. That goes back to the way that Joe Cronin put the team together last offseason, right? When they get off to this hot start and are playing defense and are playing physical and have this chip on their shoulder against a bunch of teams who are just rounding into shape, like, okay, yeah, I drank some of the Kool-Aid. They were 10-3 at one point. Like, I was very, very positive and optimistic. Guess what? Even I came around to the realization that, like, the team wasn't as bad as people thought, but it wasn't a contender. It was not a contender. It wasn't like it needed upgrades at the trade deadline, and they made downgrades. So now we're at the point where, okay, they weren't a contender, and then they downgrade. How are we a contender? How are we better? Like, a lot has changed since December 15th, 2022. It's been over 8 months. Of course it's going to be different right now than it was in December.
The other thing we had in December, at that point, Gary Payton had not played yet. He ends up not playing until December 2nd, even though he was supposed to play before that. We don't have to get into all that. But we had the hope that he would come back and help our defense. We ended up trading him for second-round picks. We had Josh Hart on the team, like I just said. We don't have him anymore. We traded him for Cam Reddish in a first, and now we don't have Cam Reddish either. So we don't have the same team. Like, a lot of people liked Winslow off the bench. We don't have him anymore. I guess we still could, but
yeah, they were never the number one offense last year. And they were really bad defensively for reasons that didn't get fixed. Why should you expect them to contend or be able to win games if Dame comes back?
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what's going to happen. If Dame miraculously plays in a Blazer uniform next year, he's going to be playing next to Scoot Henderson a bunch. Because they're going to play both of them heavy minutes if they can amend things with Dame, which it would be the most shocking thing for me as a Blazer fan in my lifetime if they were able to amend things with Dame. And Dame played and things were fine going into next year. I would be so shocked. But let's say they did it just for hypothetical sake. They're going to play Dame and Scoot together a bunch. That's the most undersized backcourt maybe in Blazer history. Right? We talk about a lack of size, and I think it was a little bit overblown with
Scoot's
Dame and
wingspan.
CJ. I think it was... Yeah, right? I think it was more so due to... there were other factors responsible for struggling defensively. I don't think defense comes down to just height, right? Or just standing reach, or just measurements. Damon Scoot is as undersized as any backcourt. Scoot struggled last year defensively in the G League. Like, so they're going to play a bunch together? How is the defense not going to be really, really bad? The front court is still basically exactly the same defensively. Like, if they're trying to win games, they're going to put Jeremy Grant on guards again. He's going to get screened out of almost every single pick-and-roll action again. And then you're going to have who protecting the rim. Like, here's the thing. You want to have hope, but it's good to be realistic. And I'm going to be realistic. You can have as much hope as you want, okay? But I'm not going to sit here and preach hope when over realism. Like, I am going to try and be realistic and say it like things are. And this is how I think things are. So, anyway. Like, I that's what I've always done, man. As I've always just said how I feel, and I'm not going to fake an opinion. You shouldn't want me to fake an opinion. How can you trust anything I say if I fake opinions? Why would anybody want to watch me if I faked opinions? I don't get that. I'm never going to do it.
Just
anyway.
Just reading through chat. There was something I wanted to read earlier, and I hope I can go back far enough.
Jimmy says, not saying they know everything. On the other podcast earlier tonight, someone said that, and host said 10,000% Dame told him he isn't coming back. Well, that's literally what it is. That's literally what it is. So
what's going to happen, though? Because, like, Cronin, to this point, hasn't shown any sort of effort or whatever to trade him either, so because he thinks that he got screwed. And
so my question for you, given that, like, you know, Cronin wanted to go the young route over Dame, right? So obviously he wanted Dame to be gone. Why isn't he negotiating with Miami then? Like, is it just a PR play? Is it?
It's 1,000%, like, to quote that last comment. It's 1,000%, 10,000% that Cronin thinks if he trades Dame to Miami, he's gonna get bashed by this whole portion of the fan base that we've been talking about. That's turned on Dame, right? That's the portion of the fan base that loves Joe, right? And who has supported Joe this whole time just for being a nice guy and hasn't criticized a single thing he's done, right? That whole portion of the fan base also is saying, don't ever trade with Miami. Don't ever trade Dame. Like, rot him on the bench, right? I've seen that. Make Dame
let
rot
Time do his
for the
work.
rest of his career on the bench. He could never play in the NBA again for all I care. He signed the contract, right?
Screw that B word. Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And so, like, I don't trade him to China before you trade him to the Miami Heat. You know, that's how that portion of the fan base seems to act. Yep. And so, from Cronin's perspective, if his group or a large portion of the fan base that has his back is saying don't trade with Miami, that package is garbage, including the few media who, like, you know, do nothing but praise him. I'm assuming the other podcast he was talking about was Jack Ramsey's. And I mean, you can go back and watch the clip from after the draft press conference where Danny got, like, super upset and was like, man, I can't believe he's saying this. This isn't good. Like, he said he was going to trade the third pick and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, like, a week later, he was saying, Cronin's never made a bad move. Like, all his trades have been good. Like, you can't even convince me that he's done a single thing wrong, when he just said that like a week prior. And his, you know, Sprague has been very clear that he also thinks that, like us, that they never intended to trade the third pick, uh,
Yep.
which is interesting. But Meringue and Hyken and all those guys who are chummy with Cronin, those guys are all saying, I wouldn't do the deal with Miami. Like, that's not enough. That package is terrible. That kind of stuff. So, like, he loses some of his perception and some of his what he's been saying. Now, his out is he can just blame that Dame only allowed one team. But that's ultimately what, I mean, I've been saying this for months. They either have to accept Miami's offer or keep Dame. I think that's pretty much their only choice, because they keep hoping that someone will come along, either whether that's a team that gives up way more for Hero or some other Caleb Martin or someone that Miami is willing to trade, or just not having to trade with Miami and, having Utah offer like 8 firsts and something like that for Dame, which is not going to happen. It's just not going to. But they keep holding out hope that that is going to happen and they don't have to trade him right now, so they do have time on their side for now. But it's going to be really interesting as the pressure of training camp comes here later this month. Like, what will happen then?
Yeah. Anyway, 83% of people, because that person asked. Anyway, yeah, the Blazers are a mess. 82% of people say the Blazers are a mess. If you're on either side of the fence, I mean, it's a mess right now. Like, I think that's the one thing we can agree upon, is that this entire situation is a mess.
I do want to read one thing from Elizabeth Allen.
Ahead.
It said they got the result of having Dame gone with each season since then too. Talking about the last 2 seasons, they got to tank both of them and get the better lotto pick while still selling tickets and merchandising and saying all this stuff about Dame. So they got the best of both worlds for 2 years out of lying to Dame. And that's also why I think it's slimy, though, what they did. But they did get benefit out of keeping him around for as long as possible.
You know what's funny is we're based in Portland, Oregon, yet a large section of our fan base just has full trust in the words of a corporation. Don't you find that a little ironic?
Say that again.
We're based in Portland, Oregon, okay? Yeah. But a large portion of our fan base has full trust in the words of a corporation.
Yeah.
I just find that ironic. I just find that very ironic. So, anyway, if you don't know where I'm going with that, oh well. Anyway.
I mean, it's a little different when the employee's not making minimum wage or something, like
true.
They're not fighting for the rights.
They're both rich.
Right. Yeah.
So both parties are rich.
Dave's made like $500 million by the time his contract's over.
I mean, I just don't understand where like all this faith comes from. Like, why? Well, actually, I have a theory. Joe Cronin is the exact opposite of Neil Olshey, and I had this argument with someone, like, he's not a smooth speaker, right? But I on the record too, I've said Joe Cronin I think was a PR hire, because if it was about finding the best GM to build around Dame, why wouldn't they run through an interview process? They didn't. They hired Joe Cronin. They hired internally a guy who's been there for Dame's entire career, right? If it was about hiring the best candidate with the best resume, why wouldn't they at least make that guy's resume compete against other candidates in an interview process? They didn't. Okay? And then Joe Cronin comes in, and as far as like a personality and a messaging standpoint, has come across almost directly opposite as Neil Olshey did. Right? Neil Olshey was the slick talker, salesman, like, type of personality, where Cronin is a guy who just seems like an everyday dude, will have some slightly misworded answers, it seems, in press conferences, right? Is not some slick talking guy. Just comes across as a regular Joe. No pun intended.
Well,
I think that part of that, in terms of just like replacing Neil Olshey with Joe Cronin, was on purpose to give the fan base a direct, like the opposite of what Neil Olshey was. Yeah. Like you have this dude who's an asshole, like he comes across as an asshole, all these things come out about how he handled things in the front office, yada, 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 like he's slick talker, whatever, and then the guy that they replace him with is not a slick talker, doesn't come across like a PR dude like Olshey does, just comes across as a regular guy, comes across as one of the nicest guys, right? Olshey came across like an asshole, Joe Cronin comes across as an extremely likable, nice guy.
Joe,
I think it was go ahead.
He also like immediately repaired a lot of media relations as well.
That as well. I think there's so many opposites between Cronin and Neil Olshey that have led to some of this trust in Joe Cronin. Because people are fed up with Neil Olshey. So having somebody that is the opposite in regards to all the things they disliked about Neil Olshey is very nice for people. So Cronin gets the benefit of the doubt. Like, I think Cronin was a PR hire, and this organization was actually smart enough to realize that having Joe Cronin as a GM was going to be better for PR purposes than Neil Olshey, because all the things that Neil Olshey struggled with aren't weaknesses for Joe Cronin. The real weaknesses for Joe Cronin, in my opinion, are, his ability to make trades and maybe just his intentions in general. But if we found out Olshey's lying, if me and Eric were sitting here saying Olshey lied and Olshey oversaw this whole situation, nobody would have questioned it.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, there's just this ultimate faith that like Joe Cronin wouldn't lie. He's a nice guy. He's a likable guy. He's honest. He wouldn't lie. He's not some slick talker, like he's not a PR guy. He doesn't talk. Olshey was the PR guy. He was the guy that spoke like a salesman and had all his big words and this and that. Joe's just a regular guy trying to do his best.
You know what the best thing to emphasize that is?
What?
For years, every trade deadline or draft or free agency or whatever, Olshey would get up there and say, the right opportunity didn't come up, but we set ourselves up for the next opportunity, right? And everyone's like, this guy never does anything. He never takes risks. He just wants to keep everyone and never trade them, right? You get Cronin coming up. He says the exact same things. Oh, we were so close on so many trades. I put in so much work and it just didn't pan out. I just couldn't do it. And you got, oh, this guy's built different. He's so much better. It's so refreshing to have a different GM, like one that actually is trying to make changes and trying to do stuff. He didn't actually do anything. He just told you he was trying to do stuff.
Well, you know what the one difference was, Eric? He admitted that he might have failed.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he said that.
Olshey would have never.
He traded CJ. No, Olshey would have never traded CJ. Well, that's because he didn't want to get ripped off in a trade. So but yeah, it's just funny because everything Cronin's done, the line, if Olshey got caught telling us all this stuff, this, Rich is in chat right now. His video about all the lies Cronin did, if Olshey did that, that would be we're in a world right now where it's very divisive. Everyone has to have an opinion and everyone has to be on one side or the other. It would be the most agreed upon, like you were saying, if Cronin, if we found out Olshey lied to people and we were saying all the same stuff about Olshey if he was still the same GM, it would be the most anyone's agreed upon anything seemingly in years, right? We would all 100% be Olshey is a scumbag. There is not a single person that would be oh, O'Shea had to say that because his GM speak, and he's really trying hard, and he did everything he could to trade the third pick. There just wasn't anything available. Like, no, we've been killing him. Like, you couldn't get anything for Scoot Henderson. You couldn't get a single good player for Scoot Henderson. Are you kidding me, O'Shea? Like, that's what everyone would be saying. Everyone.
Yeah.
And,
well, go ahead.
And now all of a sudden, because it's somewhat different, he's saying the exact same things. By the way, he was here the entire tenure of Neil O'Shea and other GMs prior to him because he's been here since 2006, so 17 years. But because he's different and a nice guy, like you said, he just gets a pass from like a bunch of people. Like it makes no sense to me.
Well, you know where O'Shea failed, and I mean we've already mentioned it. Where O'Shea failed that Cronin succeeded was with being closer to local media, because it serves two purposes. Okay. One, it comes across as like you're more open to the fan base, right? You're willing to talk with these people that they watch. You're willing to give access. You're willing to, have a direct line of communication with these reporters, whereas like O'Shea kind of shunned them, right? Like, just it comes across better for PR purposes to treat local media kindly. But then the other thing it serves, number two, is it incentivizes local media to take up your side in things. Right? And having that direct line between the GM and local media, as a GM, you're able to sit there and be like, and just pitch whatever your narrative is. Say, you know what, we tried, there was just nothing there, and blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go and report it. For PR purposes, having a good relationship with local media is maybe one of the most important things for a GM to do. And O'Shea failed there. Cronin succeeded. And it's not even like, it's not even that hard of a thing to do. You just got to talk to your credentialed reporters, be willing to talk with them off the record a little bit, talk with them a little bit before a game, maybe even, give out your number, right? That's what
go on their podcast.
Go on their podcasts, right? And then, oh wow, look at this guy. He's willing to come on.
O'Shea did none of that, by the way.
This YouTube channel, the old guy wouldn't have, he hated media and he didn't, like anyone and nobody liked him. But this guy, like, he's willing to come on the podcast. He's willing to come on the show. If he's willing to come on our YouTube stream, like, oh wow, he's willing to come on a stream and answer to a live chat, right? Like, that's only going to serve a GM's image. And I think that's really where Cronin has succeeded, because, the about face from draft night leading into free agency from a couple people, I think, would not have happened if it was a GM that didn't talk to them. Okay. And I understand it. And it's part of the reason why I haven't wanted to be credentialed is I don't want to have the pressure of like, okay, in order to maintain this relationship or maintain these credentials, I have to say certain things. Or I don't want to even get close to a GM because, like, I don't want to be biased in terms of, like, having their back in situations that I shouldn't, right? And maybe I wouldn't even know. Like, Eric, if you're a GM handling this and you handled it the same exact way, like, I would have a hard time being as critical, because you're the GOAT. You're my guy, right? There's a reason there's a GOAT in the thumbnail. I don't want to... I would never want to have that. Luckily, as just two stupid YouTubers, we will never have that. So that's good for us, right? I'll never actually truly have to worry about it. But, like, I don't want to have a close relationship with a GM because then it becomes harder to be critical of them. And that's just the human element of it. So that's really where I think Cronin succeeded, where O'Shea didn't, was just the relationship with local media. And I think it served him.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Cronin did the water bottle thing? Like, just seeing those people that killed O'Shea for it, like, spitting that into, like, oh, that's so funny. You're so hilarious, Joe.
See, I don't think Cronin would have hired Chauncey.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, like...
I know, but you just made me think of this, like, given...
I don't know.
I don't know how Cronin would have handled that. And that's why I feel like he wouldn't have. I feel like he wouldn't have wanted to handle that. Maybe if he didn't foresee it, then maybe he would have had to. But if he was able to foresee it, I don't think he would have chose Chauncey, because I don't think he would have wanted to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Because him and Chauncey are pretty close, and they knew each other back in Colorado. I don't know. Maybe.
Mary says, I don't think Doomsday is here. We've been a lotto team, bottom of the league for 2 straight years, and now our best player in franchise history doesn't want to be here anymore. I mean, how could it get more Doomsday than that? What is Doomsday then? If this isn't Doomsday, then what? Doomsday is them moving, I guess? That's the only thing that could be much worse?
Well, I don't think it's Doomsday. And another comment right above that, Sonormal says, nobody want to trade Scoop except y'all.
That's not true.
That's not true at all. Like, have we talked about trading Scoot since the draft? Like, neither of us have. We know it's not going to happen. In fact, we've been trying to say that it wasn't going to happen.
There's people that come in here and say, we can still trade Scoot, and it's like, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So that's just not true, man.
Yeah. But see, here's the thing. I mean, I just said a few minutes ago, I've wanted them to trade Dame and move on to the rebuild so we can get excited about Scoot and Sharp and Anthony and stuff. I'm like one of Anthony's biggest fans. I can't say I'm the biggest fan because there are some people who really love Anthony, including another podcaster that we've talked about tonight really loves him. Once again, a lot of that was because Anthony gave him access or whatever. But I am a huge Anthony Simons fan, and that's one of the positives of this summer was I thought my jersey curse was gonna get him too, and somehow he survived my jersey curse for now. But like, yeah, it's just a case of I just want to move on and get excited about it. As long as this Dame thing is looming, it's a bummer to me. It's not doomsday. It's just I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to just trade Dame and move on and talk about how we can make the most out of this rebuild. But there's 2 things. We have the problem where, well, first of all, like, are we going to get a good package back for Dame? I don't know, because Joe Cronin's the one in charge of that. And 2, are we going to maximize the rebuild if Joe Cronin is the one in charge? Because quite frankly, up until now, he has shown no ability to find players or locate players that could potentially pop from other teams and make trades or go out and get players or sign like an unheralded guy in free agent and have him blow up. Like, he hasn't shown any of that so far.
Well, that's my question is, like, how many Cam Reddishes until he gets criticized?
Right.
How many Keon Johnsons until he gets criticized? Or will it be more so Chauncey Billups can't develop them and he's the only guy left from Olshey? Or I mean, that's really my question, though, is just Keon Johnson, first-round value. Now he's an absolute afterthought. Cam Reddish, he has potential. He could be the small forward we always needed next to Dame, and like they didn't bring him back. Like,
he just needed an opportunity.
He just needed an opportunity, and then, like, statistically was the same exact mediocre to bad player he'd always been, shooting 32% from 3, isn't a floor spacer, inconsistent defender. We didn't even try and bring him back. So how many young guys as part of this rebuild will it take us bringing in, acting like they're super valuable, and then them turning into nothing until it's like, wait, maybe Joe Cronin doesn't know how to trade. He doesn't know how to acquire talent, right? He'll get props for the draft, but as I've said, the draft is more Mike Schmitz than him. There's a reason they brought in Mike Schmitz, which is just another, maybe hint that maybe they wanted to go this route earlier than we thought when they brought in the draft guru from ESPN and Draft Express, right? Mike Schmitz is legitimate, by the way. Really respect his work and his whole journey. I mean, I don't know. It'll be fascinating to see once the Dame situation is resolved, which, at this point, get it over with before the season, because I don't see how it can ever be fixed. And if it is fixed, I don't see how it ever bears anything more than a play-in at best. Like, maybe they can make a 5th or a 6th seed, but I don't see how, like, Dame, unless they, were able to make a Joel Embiid trade, I don't see how a Dame team works here. Like, it would take a miracle of all miracles to make a Dame team contend here without trading him. So, like, at this point, I'm with you. But go ahead. I'm losing my train of thought.
Well,
read chat and talk his stuff.
Speaking of Keon, there's a little less than 2 months. I think it's October 31st is the deadline he's going into his 3rd year of his 4-year rookie deal. A year prior to that, you have to exercise his 4th year option or decline it. So if they end up declining that option, that's another. I mean, people won't think much of it. They'll just say, "Oh yeah, Keon's going to be here one more year and he's gone." But that's another thing that's like he won't come out and say I made a mistake trading for him or whatever. But yeah, that's going to be if you don't accept look, Gabe's still in here. They did that with Jalen Smith. They took him 10th. And he played 2 years, and they traded him in his 2nd year after not giving him his 3rd year as the 10th pick. Could have had Tyrese Halliburton.
Should have had Tyrese Halliburton. Dude, I'm not even I'm not a Suns fan. That still pisses me off that they didn't take him.
Right? Yeah. Or Devin Vassell or somebody. But yeah.
I didn't like Vassell, so that doesn't make me bad. But Tyrese was perfect for him. Oh.
But yeah, so it's just. But like he'll get no criticism from that part of the fan base if he doesn't accept Keon's option because they don't really even know.
It's bad when it's a 1st round value entering his 3rd season. I don't even care if they pick up his option.
Yeah,
I don't care. Usually if they pick it up, maybe they can trade him.
Yeah,
but it's just he has no future on this team, in my opinion. He might have a future on another team. I don't think this is the best situation for him because he has 3 young guards ahead of him and Matisse Thybulle. And you'll say, oh, well, Keon's a guard, Matisse Thybulle's a wing, we'll play the 3. Sharp's going to play some at the 3. He would probably play more at the 3 if we didn't have Matisse. That would mean that there was more guard minutes, but he'll split minutes between the guard and the small forward spot next year. I think... Oh, goodness. See, if we trade Dame, it's going to be like, will Chauncey start Thybulle or Sharp? That's the next thing that we get to be annoyed about, Eric. Will Chauncey start Thybulle or Sharp? But, I mean, my whole point is, like, you got Scoot, you got Ant, you got Sharp. Thybulle will take up some minutes at the 3, meaning less minutes at the 3 for Sharp, more minutes at the guard spot. Like, where's his minutes going to come from? Where's his role going to come from?
That's exactly what we've been saying since we traded for him, by the way.
It's just, I don't see how it works. Like, and it might be a situation where they don't even start Sharp and they just run a 3-guard rotation with Scoot, Ant, and Sharp, and Matisse Thybulle and Nasir Little play the 3. Like, there's no minutes. If they pick up his option, I don't expect him to play next year. And even if he does play, I don't expect him to necessarily develop into much. That was the 1st round value we got back, was not a 1st round value.
I mean, he barely played when we were tanking at times, too. I know he got hurt, but...
Well, that's the other problem is, can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
Because he is a bit slight of frame. I mean, like, there are multiple afterthoughts on this team, which, like, I know it sounds bad, but it's just, like, with all the chaos going around this team, like, there's a couple of guys that at least I feel like the fan base has kind of forgotten about amidst this chaos, which, I'll say this, like, it's on them to perform. If they perform, they won't be an afterthought, right? Like, that might sound critical of them to call them that, but it's really up to them. Like, are they putting in the work this offseason? If so, like, will it translate onto the court? If it does, then, we could be saying, oh, wow, Nasir Little is making it tough with these 3 guards because he should be a part of the future if he can finally have his breakout season next year. But he's entering year 5. He's entering year 5, Eric. Or is it year 6? No, it's year 5 because it's 2019 draft.
No,
he's entering.
Yeah.
He's entering year 5 already.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about Nasir Little. It's still as if he's like a guy who's in his 2nd or 3rd year.
Yeah.
Not a guy who's entering his 5th season. So he's kind of been a guy that I've forgotten about when talking about rotations, and so is Keon Johnson, man. Like, and both those guys are perimeter players.
Yep. Well, and then this last week, the Kings signed JaVale McGee after he was waived by the Mavericks. And you're just thinking, like, okay, so why didn't we go after Queta? Like, I don't know. It's weird. I don't understand.
Moses Brown, he's not an upside pick or a help now pick.
Yeah,
He's
like
some
we're trying to.
size, so whatever, but
yeah, he's lengthy. I guess that's all you can say.
I'd rather play Jeremy Grant at the backup 5, like stagger him with the bench and play him at the backup 5 than
Jabari Walker, probably. I'd rather play Jabari.
Or Jabari. I mean, you need to open up some minutes at that power forward spot.
Yeah. I just play Jabari with Chris, yeah.
That lineup's gonna get the.
No, I know, but I'm saying versus.
No,
Moses
I know,
Brown,
I know.
yeah.
I'm not just.
I'm not saying I want that.
Well,
to be
I mean,
the lineup.
regardless, like the bench. I mean, they need Jovic. Okay. Jovic is not a bad piece to get back for a young player, man. And it's funny, like, all these Heat fans are like, no, we can't trade him. And now maybe Blazer fans are realizing, like, oh, Jovic is good. Here's the thing. What he's doing in FIBA shouldn't surprise anyone. He's skilled and has size. Yeah. And he's showing it. There's a reason me and Eric were both high on him in last year's draft.
I just want to say, okay, so Summer League, watching him, I was like, maybe if he's now a legit 6'11", you could maybe play him at center. But I watched 2 of his FIBA games because this is the other thing. Like, so I was being 3 hours behind, like some of those games that start at like 2 or 3 in the morning where it was still like 11 or midnight there. So like I was bored. There wasn't a lot of nightlife there or anything. So it was like, okay, I'll watch some FIBA stuff. And Jovic is like a shooting guard, basically. He's like a small forward, point forward type. He has no like big man in his game. Like it's all he hangs around the perimeter. He can dribble the ball, which is nice for a guy his size. But like I still want him like as a prospect because it's good to have guys at that size that do it. But I was hoping a few months ago that like he would be kind of someone we could just, at least this year while we're rebuilding, just kind of throw in at center and be okay still. I mean, defensively, we know it's not going to be great, but I don't.
Why can't he play the center offensively?
Because he doesn't have any like physicalness or like I just don't.
Yeah, but you just run 5 out. You just run.
Yeah,
like offensively, I think he could play the 5. Defensively is my question. Like offensively, if you have him, Jeremy, Sharp, Ant, Scoot, like they just run and gun. Mm-hmm. Everybody can bring the ball up. You just play at a breakneck speed, and then you have a bunch of shooters around Scoot. You know, run some pick and pop with him and whoever, and that's your offense. Like I actually don't think that would be terrible. Like I think that would be okay next year. I don't think it's going to be a really good offense. The problem is that might be the worst defense in the last like 5 years. Actually, worse than scoring's going up, so probably the worst defense ever.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with Jovic is just like his rim protection instincts aren't good, and then he doesn't have the strength to bang in the post. Mm. He's already a little undersized. Like if you're undersized, you got to have good instincts and or have strength in a strong base, and he just doesn't have any of that. Yeah. So he's a 4 to me.
Yeah. But he's not defensively. I don't think he's could really play any position. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with him is like, so we had an undersized backcourt, and like the only time we were ever competitive was when we had two studs of defensive forwards in Harkless and Aminu. Like, okay, now we're going undersized backcourt, and Dayton gets traded to Miami, and we got Jovic and Hawkes. Hawkes has a standing reach that is like 3.5 inches, or no, it's 4 inches shorter. So based on combine measurements, Jaime Hawkes' standing reach is 4 inches shorter than Shaden Sharp's.
Yeah.
Now, I have a running theory that that there's a correlation between vertical jump and standing reach, because I think they measure your vertical and then they measure how high you touch on the thing that tests vertical jumps, right? So I think some guys will not extend in terms of standing reach and then will register higher than expected vertical jumps. Like Pat Connaughton was one of those guys. Gary Trent Jr. is one of those guys. Jaime Hawkes is one of those guys, in my opinion, because he had like a 38, 39 inch vertical. I don't think his jump is like that.
So you said he tanked standing reach to improve his vert.
Yeah, and maybe he just didn't extend. I don't know. Like, who knows? I don't know, but that's my theory. Because Gary Trent Jr. also had like a 39-inch vert. And it was like, he had an abnormally short standing reach. I believe his standing reach was 8 foot. 8'1". So, regardless though, my entire point, because I got sidetracked, my entire point is like Hawkes doesn't have legitimate size. Like, he's a shooting guard / small forward.
Jovic, and we already talked about our problem there.
Yeah, I already talked about our problem there. Like, Jovic can't play any center. Like, he can maybe play some 4, but, like, he has a physicality problem, which has been a problem for this team. And we're still going with the undersized backcourt. Like, it just feels like we're doubling down on all the same stuff that caused us problems. And that's really my question is, like, when does it finally change? And how does it change?
Well, that's why I wanted Trey Murphy so bad, because all of a sudden you put him with Grant, and you're talking about like an Aminu Harkless, but Trey Murphy and Grant, who both could potentially shoot like 40% from 3, and play probably just as good or close to that defensively. And like, I don't know. I don't see how that couldn't have been like a really good team. And it might seem like that's not enough, but I just think it would have. And then, like I said, we would have been able to keep Anthony. We would have been able to use a trade exception or, traded Keon and some other small piece to match contracts. So we wouldn't have had to do that. So we would have had a bunch of extra firsts. We could have gotten our first back and still had Anthony to trade along with all those picks. Still had Nurk to trade. So we would have had salary filler to match any contract. I don't understand how that wouldn't have been a good option, but whatever. I mean, that's one thing I would be doing right now is offering several of those picks for Trey Murphy, because I think he's young enough and good enough to be that answer long term at the 3. And
we should have just got him in the 2021 draft, like I said.
Yeah.
Because that was my guy, man.
Well, I mean, we didn't have a pick in that draft, so.
What did we... Was that one of the ones we traded for Rocco?
Yeah.
Like, I know we were mad about missing on Sadiq Bey, but that's really where we missed out.
Well, Sadiq was the year
what
before.
Was our pick? Oh, was it?
Yeah, Sadiq...
Yeah, no. Sadiq was the year before, but we traded 2 firsts for Rocco. Could we have drafted Trey Murphy with that?
No, the other one we were 23rd. It ended up being Garuba, I think, was
maybe
the pick.
You could have traded up. Like, I mean, Trey Murphy coming out of college, like legit 6'8", 40% 3-point shooter, athletic. You bet on that every time outside of the lottery, and he gets drafted 17th. I had a lottery grade on him because it's just you always, if you can bet on size, athleticism, and shooting. When you have size and athleticism, it gives you a good chance to be a decent defender, even if you don't have the best technique or IQ or awareness or instincts or whatever. Just size plus athleticism gives you a good chance. And then shooting ability, too. Like, yeah, I still get frustrated that we couldn't find a way to get him because He and Herb, man. When New Orleans got both those guys in that draft, I was saying they won the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and looked at the stream a couple of weeks ago. Like, those two guys were such phenomenal picks. Like, that's the thing. If you want to go cheap and still try and win, you got to find those types of guys in the draft. Because Herb and Trey Murphy last year were making a combined, like $4 million? $5 million?
Something like that, yeah.
Like 5% of the salary cap? Mm-hmm. No, less than that, probably 4% of the salary cap. Anyway, sorry. Trey Murphy rant is over.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like so that's what Cronin needs to do. He needs to identify forwards, because I don't, whether they're trying to win with Grant and whether they're going to trade him this year or not, I still don't think, like, if you're talking 3 years down the road, I don't think he's our starting power forward, So you got to figure out those three front court positions, and maybe you only have two positions to fill, power forward and center, if you're trying to make Anthony, Sharp, and Scoot work together. But I think you have to find the perfect fits at the 4 and 5, and they were never able to do it with the smaller backcourt. They had some unlucky stuff happen, like Zach Collins, seemingly about to break out and then gets hurt for 2 years and doesn't play but 12 games in 2 seasons. So like that kind of stuff happened. But one of the biggest failures of the small backcourt to me has been not putting the right front court around it. And like you just mentioned, the one time they had a somewhat decent front court with depth, they went to the Western Conference Finals. So they just need to find some way to get those pieces. And so if you make a trade with like Miami, it's not necessarily what you get back, it's what you do with those pieces. Like if they went to New Orleans and somehow got Trey Murphy for like 3 of those first or something, and I mean, like, it might not seem like you got as much back, but I don't know, like they're going to be in a position to target those players with those picks and use them. And I keep saying this too, I think I would look for picks more in the future, because what happened with the Josh Hart trade was we traded him for a pick in the upcoming draft, and then you basically only have a few months where you have to use that pick or keep it or trade it, and then it's done. Now it's like an asset. Like Chris Murray doesn't have the value of a future first, or at least he probably shouldn't right now. I mean, maybe you get a dumb GM that thinks like Keon's worth a first like 6 months later or almost a year later, but unfortunately that was our GM. But like you need to make these trades so you have those picks, so you have, if it's like a 2028 first, that gives you 5 years to try and do something with it. And if you can't do it in like 5 years, that it just, to me, you need to keep expanding those windows. So short of getting max picks in the 2025 draft that are unprotected to have the maximum chance to get Cooper Flag or whatever, I would just be getting future picks so you have multiple years to try and find those guys, since you've had such trouble identifying them.
Yeah, so anyway, why does anyone think the Portland Trailblazers would hire a bad general manager? Well, because they weren't, they cared about
cheap
PR.
too.
They're cheap and they cared about PR. So, I mean, if they cared about hiring a good GM, why wouldn't they have an interview process to try and identify the best GM? So, anyway.
I mean, I'm not saying that Chris Murray couldn't eventually be worth more than a first round pick. It's possible. I'm just saying, like, right now, you're not, if you had a 2026 first round pick, it would be way more valuable in a trade than Chris Murray is right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Elizabeth Allen says Pelicans have no interest in trading Murphy. The value of him is super high. His extension about to be big too, and their local beat guys said this summer. here's the thing. If they really, really wanted Scoot Henderson, they would trade Trey Murphy. And the reports were that they really, really wanted Scoot Henderson. So now, of course it's going to be like, he's an integral part of this team because he is. He's a really good player because he is. We're going to sign him to an extension because if they don't trade him, of course they're going to sign him to an extension. Of course they value him super high. They should value him super high. But we're talking about Scoot Henderson. And if they were serious about getting Scoot Henderson, then that is what a serious, type of guy looks like in terms of an offer for the third pick. But it would have taken much more, in my opinion, for them to get him because Trey Murphy, I think, could end up being a fringe all-star caliber player. Best case scenario ends up being, an all-star because he averages 21 points per game and plays good defense on a good team, right? But like Scoot, we talk about him as the number one pick if he was in other drafts. Like, that's superstar potential.
Right.
So, if they were serious, the thing is, if they weren't willing to offer Trey Murphy for Scoot Henderson, they were never serious about trading for Scoot Henderson and didn't want to. And the report that said that they wanted to was false.
Right.
Maybe it was, but I don't know.
But Cronin will never know either because he didn't take their phone.
Cronin will never know. We'll never know because, yeah, the only one who knows if he would have done it is David Griffin.
Yeah, and to a larger point. Yes, I know Trey Murphy would have been very hard to get. But they were also desperate to, like, if we had Trey Murphy instead of Jeremy Grant, are we that much worse off last year? Are we that? I think Trey could potentially develop more as a point of attack defender more than Jeremy is. I don't know if it would have been that much worse. Plus, he's a better shooter and stuff. So.
I do think we still would have been missing that edge.
Yeah.
I think Josh Hart gave us an edge that's hard to quantify.
Well, Hart had to be part of the trade because he was his salary was needed basically. But I'm saying
I'm just saying would we have been worse off I thought you were just mean in terms of him starting. Okay, never mind. I'm tripping up. Would we have? Yeah, I don't know. Trey Murphy is, if you want to sit, I'm gonna sit here and just compare him to Josh Hart just to have this conversation, because I think this conversation matters for the future too, despite not having Dame. Josh Hart gave us an edge that I think we need to find by bringing in somebody else. Maybe it can be Scoot, but I would like to find another guy in the future that has that edge to him, that plays his ass off like Josh Hart does, that's physical like Josh Hart is. Because I do think that's good to have for a team. And that's something that bummed me out when we traded Hart. Yeah, I know he was scared to shoot the ball. Yeah, I know he kind of struggled, but I do think that he brought something that's hard to quantify and something that I think we need.
Yeah, it's funny? Cronin and Chauncey have said the same thing, yet they never seem to go out and get those guys. They just sit on their...
They get Moses Brown, who just got cooked by Nick Claxton in a pickup run. Did you see those highlights?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we got to talk, speaking of runs, did you see that tweet today? I think you did, about Derek Lively dominating, and NBA players are saying he's going to be a problem and they can't score on him in pickup games and stuff, and he's just like a monster out there. Yeah, that's going to be frustrating to watch for years too.
He's going to be a defensive player of the year candidate. He's the next Jared Allen, but he might end up being better than Jared Allen. Derek Lively's freaking legit. How early were we on the bandwagon? We were on the bandwagon when it still looked like there was a chance that the Blazers would be able to get him with the pick that they got from Josh Hart.
Yeah.
In February. Because he kind of struggled to start the season, but why would you bet on Derek Lively? Freak athlete at 7 feet and great defensive instincts and quick off the ground.
Yeah. And
he's flashed little bits of skill. So it gives him a high floor because even if that skill doesn't develop, he's going to be able to be a really good rim protector. He's athletic, so he'll be a lob target, can run the floor, and can just do that at a really high level. That makes him maybe a top 10 starting center someday. if the skill doesn't develop. But if the skill develops, because I think he might be able to end up being a little bit of a shooter, I think he might end up being able to be a little bit of a short role playmaker. He could be an all-star. He could push for top 5 starting center someday because of that. So that's why it made sense to bet on Derek Lively, because high floor, high ceiling for a big man. It's hard to find a high floor, high ceiling big man that's not a top 5 pick in the draft. So yeah, he would have been real nice to have somehow. But no, Dallas got him.
Dallas is going to be really good. Yeah, they traded down, got rid of Bertans, and got... yeah. Must be nice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they went from being kind of screwed last year to making some really good moves this summer, and didn't really have any assets to do it with, and still managed to pull off some good moves.
They got my guy Omax, which was a dub for them.
I'm not a huge Grant Williams guy, but I think that was a good pickup for them for the price tag they got him for.
Yeah. I'm just reading chat.
And to go back real quick to the Trey Murphy thing. So my whole point isn't Trey Murphy. Like, that ship has probably sailed, like Elizabeth Allen said. But to me, that's the most critical point from this point forward, other than the obvious factors like Scoot has to be a star, Sharp has to somewhat develop into a fringe all-star. Like, you need a star out of one of those two, and then the other one needs to be really good, I think, or this rebuild's going to be tough from the beginning. But the most important part, other than developing those guys, is to identify players that will ultimately be those kind of Trey Murphy types, or the next Jeremy Grant type, or the next Derek Lively, or Nicholas Claxton, or whatever, as your center moving forward. Like, you need to go out and find those guys, and you have a few years to do it now. It's not as critical as a win now move where you have to make moves to build a contender right away. You have several years to do it. It's just, if we're looking back 2-3 years from now and those guys aren't still on the team yet, I think it's going to be a case where this front office failed once again to identify the right front court pieces. And we know they can get guards, but that's why guards haven't been valuable, like Hero and allegedly Anthony, in trades this summer, is because there's like, most teams have those players on them or can get them. It's the wings and the front court that are costly to either acquire in a trade, or that are tough to find. Like, in a draft, you have to be really good at scouting and stuff like that. So you got to go find those guys in the next couple of years.
Yep. So, I mean, once we move on from Dame and going into next year, obviously we'll have a lot of time to talk about that. Pay attention to college ball this year when the Ignite play in Portland. Has the G League schedule been announced yet?
No, I don't think so.
When the Ignite play in Portland, I would I would go see that game if you could. I will be at one of those games at least. I don't know how many they'll play. I think it's 1 or 2. Obviously, just to scout guys, because there's a ton of top prospects at the top of the draft that are playing for the G League Ignite. So.
Yep.
Anyway. Anything else, or do you want to take questions from chat? It can be questions, Blazer questions, channel questions, life advice questions, whatever. All right, I've had enough. They'll be back on like the 15th account.
They're not going to tell you how many accounts they've had.
I know. Just one, actually. No, there's the same account that was like last stream going on about like, be positive, be positive. Why are you so negative? We're the number one offense. We're the number one offense. And then like said Chris Murray, but spelled it Maury instead. And then kept going on about my crystal ball. It was a different account. And then there's like this long ranting comment after the stream that was talking about how I'm not respectable. So it's like, okay, well, there, you insult me. Hit them, knowing that they'd be back. And tonight they're back on a different account. I know it's the same person, you know, but they'll always say, it's just one account. It's just one account. Yeah, no, that's BS. Like, those of you who come in under many different accounts, like, we know your shtick, okay? We recognize it. If we don't ban you, we're being very generous, so calm down, because we can recognize you very quickly, okay? I'd actually, if you said this is like my 10th account, I wouldn't have hid this one.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you were just honest,
yeah.
I wouldn't hide it. But since you lied, goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, come on. How dumb do you think... Yeah, I know you think we're dumb, but how dumb do you think we are?
I'm still waiting for someone to be as creative as People's Mix. He's the one person that I give credit to for, as annoying as he was known as the People's Mix, and then he got banned, and then created an account called Kevin Reese.
Yeah.
And like, we didn't know it was him for a while. That was a good one.
Yeah, see, that's how it's supposed to be done.
But this guy who keeps just making these one name.
I think this is somebody else, actually.
Yeah.
Because Kyle like wanted Dame gone.
Yeah, it's true.
This person is saying Dame's gonna be here for 4 more years. So I think it's 2 different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's the legendary Kyle.
Demir says he has a question for me. What's up, bro? Hey, Demir, how are you? Is that your question? What's up? What's up? Just ask your question if you had another one. Fight Lounge wants to know how we rate Murray as a defender rebounder. He gives us length and shooting at the 3 spot.
I don't think he's a 3. I think he's a 4. I think he's too slow to play the 3 consistently. I think some 3s he'd be fine against, but against quicker 3s, I think he'd struggle to stay in front of them. And then skill-wise, I don't think he really works as well at the 3 compared to the 4. Defender and rebounder at the 4 spot, I think he'll be okay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's a solid defender, really smart, and rebounding, he's good. I think those are both strengths for him. I think he's got the potential to be possibly one of the best corner 3-point shooters in the NBA. Just got to develop those that a little bit, like his brother did. He's got a pretty high quick release, which is probably bodes well for him. But yeah, I think I'd like to see him have that Jabari Walker attitude from last year, where it's just like, I know I'm not a star. I'm going to be the best at being playing a role as I can be. And so hopefully he just does that. And that includes defense and rebounding, which I think are positives from him. But I agree, not at the 3.
Does Murray work next to Grant? I mean, if we're going to use Grant as an on-ball defender, then it makes no difference if he's the 3 or the 4, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not optimal, but it's not about what's optimal next year. So if Murray plays next to Grant, I'm not tripping about it. You know, if in order to get Chris Murray minutes, in order to see if he can be like an NBA player as a rookie or not, if we have to play Jeremy Grant at some 3 next to him, then that's fine. Like, I don't care that it's not optimal, you know? Or if we play Chris Murray at some 5, like, that's fine. Get him minutes, you know? Because it's about development and building towards the future more so than winning games. So what's optimal isn't really what matters the most.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tori, I honestly am curious, since you saw the G League special, which featured Scoot's story, what you took from it. What I took from it from Scoot's perspective, or like the whole thing. I mean, the whole thing was interesting just to see the journey, kind of like the ins and the outs. Like guys kind of explain their struggles, like as G League players and the mental side of things. Like Denzel Valentine was featured, so it was kind of interesting to have some insight on his story as a, coming into the league, being well known after his run at Michigan State, playing for the Bulls, and then kind of falling out of the league back to the G League. It was just interesting stories, interesting insight into the G League. Made me a little bit more excited that we have a G League team. From Scoot's perspective, I mean, if you're going to restart a franchise and you're looking for like the right type of personality, he fits that. So, that just made it more evident, but it wasn't anything like surprising or anything new. It just kind of confirmed the positive feelings I had about his personality.
The it factor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mostly off the court, honestly. On the court, of course, too, but off the court just seems like a really good dude. So, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how he changes as he matures as an NBA player. Dame is definitely different than when he came into the league. It's impossible not to be different. I'm not saying that in a bad way or anything, just kind of the way he... I don't know. There's just differences that you see when you get a player as a rookie and then 10 years later they're a superstar, right? Like, young kid fresh into the league versus experience. There's differences. So it'll be interesting to see him develop those anyway.
I don't think it's confidence because I think Dame was confident in himself. I'm trying to think of the right word. Maybe brash. Like Scoot just seems more like a little like not crazy in a bad way, but he just seems a little more like out there.
Dame seemed a little more reserved when he was
Dame was really quiet. Yeah, like just respectful. And once again, I'm not saying like Scoot isn't respectful or whatever, but like Dame just like lead by example type of person. Scoot's more of a vocal person.
Yeah, and I think Dame became that vocal person.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Dame became one of the most vocal and stuff like that. I'm just saying, like, when they came into the league, Dame was like this quiet, small college guy that was just trying to fit in. And I feel like Scoot could, from day one, like, run a team if he needs to.
One of the reasons I want Cooper Flagg is because Cooper Flagg's kind of the same way. I don't know about him like off the court as a person, but on the court, that dude talks talks
crap, yeah.
So much crap.
Yeah.
It has an edge to him and an intensity about him that having that paired with Scoot's intensity and edge would just be fun, man. Would just be fun. Like, God. If we suck the next 2 years and get Cooper Flagg out of it, and then we end up like, a really good team down the line, I'm still not giving Cronin props for it.
Yeah, but it'd be cool.
We're so bad, we're good. Good job.
Well,
like,
Mike asked something along these lines. What's the best case realistic scenario in 3 years? To me, the best case is Scoot's an all-star within his second or third season. Sharp develops. Either Simons and the other two work out playing together, or we trade one of them for something really good at another position, and then we hit a home run in one of the next two drafts, which would be, I don't know if it's Madas or Flagg or whatever, but someone like that. But
yeah. I don't know. If we just sit here and get lucky and get the top pick the next 2 years, is that something a GM deserves credit for? Like, I don't think a GM deserves credit for that.
But that's another reason why, people are like, oh, why aren't you higher than, why is it doomsday for the next couple of years? It's not that it's doomsday. It's that I actually think that's the best possible route is to be bad the next couple of years. So I'm not saying it's wrong to be bad, or I'm sad that we're going to be bad the next couple of years if we're rebuilding. It's just I want to get the best possible outcome out of this rebuild and not pretend like we're going to be good or be like a mediocre team, because I think that would be worse.
Yeah, like this offseason to me was doomsday, and then
Right.
I mean, we have to make the best out of it, and the best out of it might be to struggle and tank and trust the process, as Mike says. Is Cooper Flagg a 4 or a 5? Cooper Flagg might be able to play all 5 positions someday in the NBA.
He's only like 6'9", so he's probably. I mean, he could still grow a little bit. He's probably a power forward. Yeah.
His instincts as a shot blocker are.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he's quick off the floor. Like, I think he'll be able to play some center. Like, not to. You see the way Nick Claxton defends, and he's like 6'9", right? He's not the biggest dude, but he's so quick off the ground and his instincts are so good that he's able to protect the rim, and he's a good defensive center because of it. I feel like he could be potentially the same. The thing is, I think he'd need consistent reps at a center, and I don't know if he's going to get him in the league, but like, I think you'll be able to play him at the 5 in small ball lineups, and he can be like a point forward. Because he could truly handle the ball, and his passing's been getting better. Like LeBron, not to compare him to freaking LeBron, but like LeBron can play any position, right?
Yeah.
And that's been part of the appeal about him. Cooper Flagg's the same way, in my opinion. He could be the same way. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and say he is, but he could be the same way if he truly reaches his potential, because he can protect the rim and he has enough size that I think he'll be usable there. So
yeah.
Anthony Paris says he's 6'11". Do we truly know how tall he is? I don't think he's 6'11". I've seen 6'8", 6'9".
I think he measured at 6. It was like 6'8".
Oh, Claxton is 6'11".
Oh. With shoes. Yeah.
Well, what draft was Claxton?
This was his first year on his new deal.
Yeah, but it was like a what? 2
It was the 2019 draft, because that was the draft our first draft, I think.
Nick Claxton without shoes is 6'10". So, yeah, he's probably a little bit taller than Cooper Flagg, but Cooper Flagg could still grow. Brandon Clark, 6'7" without shoes. He plays a little bit of center for Memphis sometimes when they need him to. Yeah, I think Cooper Flagg in small ball lineups will be able to play some 5. He'll never start at the 5, I don't think, but I think he's a forward that can swing up to center and is skilled enough that he can facilitate and initiate, and that's ideal, obviously. I mean, your dream lineup after the next 2 years, what is it? Or 3 years from now. Let's say 3 years from now, what's your dream lineup?
I mean, I don't know. That's tough. I mean, obviously, Flagg would be one of them. I mean, if we got Flagg and Boozer as our forward, I guess that would be my dream right there. And then, I don't know, whoever next year. I haven't really, but maybe Klingon, just realistically, I guess. But that would be dream center, I guess.
Your realistic dream lineup. I mean, okay, let's just say we trade. I don't know. McHale and Flagg at the forward spots would be kind of fun if you had like Scoot and then one of Sharp and Ant.
Yeah.
And then I don't know who the center is, Lively, which we wouldn't be able to get, but
it's a Ron Holmes.
Like, imagine Scoot, Sharp, McHale, Flagg, Lively.
Ugh. Stop.
Oh man, that'd be amazing. No. CJ's not getting it done for New Orleans, and they desperately want a lead guard, so then they trade Trey Murphy for Ant. Trey Murphy and a pick for Ant, because Ant broke out into a star, but we want to go with Sharp. So then Scoot, Sharp, Trey Murphy, Cooper Flagg, some all-star center, Embiid. It wouldn't be unbeaten. I don't know. Yeah, it's impossible to answer. I'm just kind of.
I mean, Claxton's still 23. He'll be a free agent after this year, I think. So that's actually a realistic target if they. Because
our lotto pick next year. Imagine our lotto pick next year and like multiple firsts for McHale and Claxton, and then we're sitting here like, oh yeah, we couldn't have done it last year. Claxton, McHale, Cooper, Flag, Scoot, and Sharp. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you get Cooper, Flag, it just makes it real easy to build out the other two spots.
Yeah.
I don't think long-term Scoot, Ant, Sharp is optimal. I think at some point you're going to have to choose between Ant and Sharp. I think that's going to be a talking point next year when we actually get into game action. I do think we're going to have to figure out which one is. I mean,
if you had Flag and Claxton with those three, I think it could work. You have to find the right 4-5. You have to find the right.
But like, okay, if Flag is what he's supposed to be, and Scoot is what he's supposed to be, and then you have like your number 3 is Ant or Sharp, like I feel like they could still be a top 3 offense and be better defensively, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've talked about this a lot on Twitter or X or whatever you want to freaking call it.
I ain't calling it X.
Even though it's about to get changed to X.com.
X-nay on the X, okay?
But anyways, even in that scenario, because people always bring it up, we already know the 3-guard lineup can't work. But, I mean, Sharp's bigger than any guard we've tried as the 3rd guard. And also, he really only has to play 12 minutes at small forward, because if he's the backup shooting guard, and Anthony plays like 12 of his minutes at point guard, then you have 24 minutes for him at shooting guard and 12 at small forward. So you really only have to like start him in theory, and then you take one of those 3 out right away and you put in your defensive guy, whoever you want that to be. And then you can play all 3 of them 36 minutes with very little 3-guard lineups. So I don't think it's really that important that we fix that, but that's if they work.
It's not as much about the size as it is about I don't trust Sharp to become a lockdown defender or even necessarily a positive defender. I think he can. I just don't expect it. You know, there's a difference there. It just comes down to
what if Scoot becomes a good defender?
Here's the thing though. Here's what it comes down to for me. Like, if Scoot's a good defender, right, and then you hope like one of Ant or Sharp become solid. Okay, whichever one becomes solid, whichever one is the better defender might be the guy you pick, right? If you can have, say it's Sharp that becomes the better defender. If you can have Scoot, Sharp, Flag, Claxton as your other starter, would it make more sense to just have like a 3-and-D guy or somebody that is maybe a below average defender and better offensively?
I don't know. I think in that scenario you could do a lot more things, because in theory Flag and Claxton would be completely switchable. So you could just have everyone traditional lineup defensively and not have to hide anyone, and then you'd still have switchable defenders that can protect the rim behind them. I think
still have like Sharp guarding 4s then if you had one of those out on the perimeter. You'd have Ant guarding 3s, like if you had one of them guarding guards. Like, it would make more sense to have
I would only have them do that on a switching scenario. I wouldn't have them starting out on guards.
Yeah, still though, when in a switching scenario that would be the result.
But that's going to happen
I know, but that's where I'd rather have like a bigger 3 that's a 3-and-D guy, where, you know, it gives you less problems if you switch. Mm-hmm. And then offensively, like, that still could be maybe the best offense in the league if Scoot and Flag and
Right.
whichever of Ant or Sharp you choose
But
becomes
like,
what they are supposed to become.
let's say your guy Omax becomes that 3 and D small forward that you think would be perfect with that lineup, right?
Yeah.
Why would you have to? Why couldn't you play all of them? You'd
Play
still
all of
you'd
what do you mean?
you'd still have 36 minutes at the small forward to play that guy.
I
See what
mean,
I'm
I
saying?
just don't think it. Yeah, but at some point, the value, like, if Ant or Sharp is not ending games, I feel like they might have more value on the trade market than to us if they're not ending games for us. I
Yeah,
don't
it could
know.
be the case,
And
but
like if they're all like star or borderline star caliber offensive players, then you run into egos like they're gonna want to end games.
well, what if you convince Sharp to be like more defensive minded than offensive minded at some point?
I
I don't
mean,
know.
if both Sharp and Ant can become truly solid defenders, then it can work. I just don't expect both of them to. I just think it's not the most optimal like trio
Mhm.
starting at point guard, shooting guard, small forward. I think it's going to come down to like, and who knows who the starting 4 or 5 is, but I think in order to put an optimal two-way lineup together, they're going to have to choose between one of those two guys because I don't expect both of them to become truly solid defenders. I think it will most likely be one or the other. And if you want to go for some switchability, it's going to be tough
But that
unless you're bigger.
the if we had flag two with those three and they're all taking the pressure off of each other offensively to where you don't have a Dame situation where he has to carry the team, I think then that allows all four of them to be better defenders.
Yeah, maybe, but is it going to be a top 5 defense? Like, I feel like if you have a big 3 and D, like maybe lockdown, a Minu type that can shoot better, small forward, like a Minu type defensively, with Scoot, whichever one of the better is a better defender between Ant and Sharp, with Flag, and then like a good rim protecting center, I feel like that lineup has the potential to be top 5 on both ends of the court.
Mm-hmm.
And like at that point, you are guaranteed contention if you're able to play at a top 5 level on both sides of the court, right? Like you don't have weaknesses. You can win games if your shots aren't falling because you can grind it out defensively, and if your shots are falling, it makes it so that even if the other team gets hot, you're able to win shootouts. Like you're able to win every type of game, every style of game. The Blazers have, at least as far as I've seen them in my lifetime, I've never seen them be able to consistently win any type of game.
Yeah.
Right? It's always been their shots have to be falling or else they're in trouble, and it doesn't matter who they're playing against, their shots have to be falling. And then when it comes to like, they had a couple well-rounded teams with Dame where the defense wasn't too bad. There was even a year where they were top 10, they were like 9th. But when it came to the playoffs, it felt like they could not play either side of the floor at an elite enough level. So,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it can work out. It's just like if they kept those 3 and had Flag and had like an athletic rim protecting center that was like a good pick and roll target, that might be the best offense in the league. But it would have some more weaknesses defensively. So it's just like what do you prioritize is my thing.
Yeah. I don't think you necessarily have to answer that this year. I think you just try to maximize the potential of all those
Oh,
guys.
for sure. 1,000%. I just think knowing that could be a fork in the road in the future, they're going to get compared, right?
Yeah, for me, it comes down to like even the Dame CJ Norm thing. We had like who was our starting 4 that year? Roca, who
Yeah.
didn't end up being good. Like you would think in theory that would have been a good fit with those guys at the 4 because he had played some 5 before
we just
that.
we just didn't have a point of attack defender.
Yeah, and then
I think you need multiple.
yeah, but so we needed basically either a switchable 5 like Claxton or a point of attack defender, like more like a Mo Harkless type at the 4 versus a Roko help defender type, right? To make it work.
Yeah.
But and then our backups were freaking Carmelo Anthony and Enes Kanter. Like, so in my opinion, like that was, it's hard to know if that could have worked out long term playing those 3 together when they didn't really have any of the pieces at the 4 or 5 that they needed to be a good unit. So that's where I struggle with it. If you find the right 4 or 5, and like you said, maybe Flag's so good that you don't need to play 3 guards because you're so skilled offensively anyway. But to me, if you find the right 4 who's a good point of attack defender, which is tough to find, but if you find it and you find a switchable center, that's a little easier to find, in my opinion, whether that's like a Claxton or Lively type. I think it can work with a smaller point guard through small forward.
I think it can. I just, it comes back to like, we traded CJ to start Ant at the 2 spot, and then we get Sharp, and we should trade Ant to start Sharp at the 2 spot, and then we get the 3rd pick, and we're talking about that being Scoot Henderson, and it's like we're talking about trading him for forward depth, and it's just like constantly the conversation has been.
Or trade Dame to give Scoot a start.
It's always been like trading a guard to optimize the balance of the team. And even if it can work, if you can trade, Ant for a similar caliber player at a 3 spot that's, maybe a little worse offensively but better defensively and switchable and gives you less problems when you switch and gives you, another solid defender. Yeah, like, the team's probably better if you have Scoot, you have Flag, you have Sharp. Because I think you just have enough offensively, and then just, you have a shot creator that can maybe hang defensively off the bench. Like, you'd have to figure out how the bench complements the starting unit. I just think, even if they do end up working out, I think there's going to be conversations in the future about maybe optimizing the balance of the starting lineup, and that would involve trading and choosing between one of Sharp and Simons.
Yeah, I guess I just see Sharp as more of a shooting guard, small forward than any of those other players we tried in the past. I think his game could work at the 3 better than any of those other ones. And I think if he's going to become like a star player, it would have to be on both ends. So I don't know. I think he could play the 3 if he if he becomes like a Kobe level player or something, because Kobe was good on both sides of the ball at times. So like,
in the most optimistic world, they could work out 1 through 3, but optimistic,
Yeah,
optimistic. So it's going to be interesting to kind of compare them next year, because I'm expecting Sharp to take more of a step forward than Ant, but will he be comparable to Ant? I'm not sure. Because Ant, I'm expecting to take another step towards stardom. Well, Sharp, I don't know. It'll be interesting to compare, like, which one is better in certain areas, like, that'll be... And it's not even necessarily in, like, a competition between them. It's more so just kind of an interesting... That ringtone is interesting, too.
It's a timer.
Oh, yeah, it's 12:45. Anyway, we've been live for a while. It's time to end the stream, probably. Thank you, chat. Once we got below 100 viewers, we were going to sign off, but you guys are still going strong at 110. If you haven't subscribed to our main channel, by the way, because since it's August and I haven't done anything on that channel in 2 weeks, I've been losing a few subs. I think it might be Heat fans. I don't know. Kind of sucks. So if you aren't subscribed to our main channel, let's try and reach 9,100 again. Try and get to 10,000 before the end of the year. If you have a fan who's a Blazer fan that might be interested in content, feel free to introduce them to Blazers Uprise. We're trying to do big things next season, which basically starts in a month. So, We appreciate you guys tuning in on our second channel. I appreciate you guys rolling with us through what has been a chaotic offseason. Drew says, Tori, are we playing basketball tomorrow? Are we? What? Tomorrow's a Tuesday, so I don't know about that, man. Anything else, Eric?
No, thanks everyone for watching. It was fun being back, and once again, thanks to all the guys who filled in while I was gone. And yeah, it was fun to talk some basketball.
Yep, 100%. So we'll see. I don't know. Like, I might before October take a stream off. Maybe let you stream with someone. Like,
sweet.
Because I haven't taken really any time off in a year. So also my work right now is hectic. Like, August and September has usually been the time that I can kind of like relax from the creative standpoint of doing YouTube. But I have new work, making graphics, making a ton of stuff for NFL creators. So if you watch any big time NFL creators, you might see some of my work. So I'm just at the point where creativity wise, normally I'm refreshing at this time of the year. I'm kind of getting some creative burnout. So we'll see. Maybe bring in Rich for you or whoever you want.
Mike says Ant is entering his 6th year, right? But Nas entering his 5th is not worth much. My guy, Ant averaged over 20 points a game last year and is a proven one of the best shooters in the NBA. Like, he's actually shown something in the last couple of years. That's not saying that Nas can't show something in the future, but Ant has shown something and is a proven starter level player. I don't know.
Ant is far, far, far better than Nas right now. So, anyway, that's a wrap. I'll keep you posted on any content. If a Dame trade happens, of course, we'll go live. At least maybe Eric will go live if I'm sleeping, because I have not had my ringtone on. Anyway, I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good rest of your Monday. Have a good rest of your week. We'll catch you again on Thursday night, which the NFL season will be starting Thursday, so that'll be fun. Shout out to you if you are drafting a fantasy team. Good luck to you if you're playing fantasy football. And that's a wrap for Blazers Uprise Live. See you next time. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.